The Strongest Sect. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 576. I don't mind dirty hands. After Ling Yufang appeared, he first rubbed salt into the wound and mocked the Eternal Sect as the ancient sect. This is definitely a guy who is asking for a beating with his strength. To be honest, this is the first time I have encountered such a character since I traveled through time. If I don't beat him up and smash his dignity to pieces, how can I be worthy of the audience? My Eternal Sect welcomes you all to discuss martial arts, but Jun Changxiao paused and said, "Sir, will you come in person or let someone else come?" Ling Yufang smiled and said, "To show respect, of course, my Xianzhao masters will come to ask your sect for advice." Although this guy's arrogant, he is not a fool. He has heard about the things about the Eternal Sect more or less. This time, he will definitely not go on stage. Jun Changxiao shook his head and said, "Sir, Ling, these people you brought are not good enough. Not good enough." The two martial emperors and 10 martial kings frowned. Ling Yufang smiled and said, "Whether it is okay or not, you can only know after asking for advice. Sect Master Jun, don't jump to conclusions. No means no." Jun Changxiao said. The Xianzhao master looked unhappy. He couldn't stand being looked down upon by a young man. Ling Yufang said with a smile, "Master Jun is very confident. If you insist on asking for advice, I will definitely accompany you to the end." Jun Changxiao said, "This life and death arena is the challenge arena of my sect. Master Ling can send someone to fight." In that case, Ling Yufang didn't want to waste time and said, "Then I'd rather obey than be respectful." He waved his hand. Swish. A tall and strong young man jumped onto the stage and said, "Xinjiang Sect's inner sect disciple, Wu Kui wants to fight." This man was burly and had strong arms. It was obvious that his external martial arts skills were very strong. "Yuhua," Jun Changxiao said lightly, "go to fight." "Yes." Yang Yuhua stepped onto the stage with a burning gaze. He didn't expect that under such circumstances, the sect master would let him be the first to fight. Jun Changxiao and Princess Hanglian walked down and handed the arena to Yang Yuhua and Wu Kui. The martial artists who were watching the excitement stared intently. Xinjiang Sect is a prestigious 4th-rate sect in Xianzhao. The inner disciples must be quite strong. This battle must be very exciting. Of course. As a native of Yangzhou in the southwest, I hope that the disciples of Wangu Sect can win. However, they have come from afar to cause trouble, and the disciples who will fight are not ordinary people. The possibility of winning is probably not enough. Boom. There was a loud noise from the ring, indicating that the battle had begun. The martial artists watching the battle all widened their eyes, because the Xinjiang Sect disciple named Wu Kui retreated one after another, barely stabilizing on the edge, with an extremely ferocious face. Swish. Yang Yuhua strode over, and his right fist carried spiritual energy and blasted forward. Boom. Thump thump thump. Wu Kui retreated again, and finally staggered off the stage, then spurted out a mouthful of blood with a wow, and his eyes were filled with horror. The martial artists watching the excitement were all dumbfounded. 2 punches knocked out the inner sect disciple of Xinjiang Sect, causing him to spit blood. This inner sect disciple of Wangu Sect is too terrifying. "Thank you." Yang Yuhua bowed. Ling Yufang raised his black hair and thought to himself, "This Wangu Sect is really capable. No wonder my father sent so many masters." In the first battle, Yang Yuhua won. This made the warriors who were watching the excitement completely unable to recover, because it started too quickly and ended too quickly. There was even faster. Ling Yufang sent out the second fighter. As soon as the two sides announced their names, the Xianzhao Sect disciple was kicked out by Li Shangshan. Later, Simazanda, Cui Bujian and other Router Sect disciples went out one by one. Most of them were at the level of 2nd or 3rd grade martial sects, and even if the opponent was a 5th or 6th grade martial sect, they could defeat them directly. Boom. Another Xianzhao Sect disciple was knocked out by Huo Ling's punch. Princess Hanglian was stunned. This Huo Jr. is not very strong. He has just joined the Eternal Ancient Sect, but he seems to have become a different person. Jun Chang smiled and said, Mr. Ling, you brought so many people with you. If they all go on the field one by one, it will take a long time. So don't waste everyone's time. Just send the Martial King. Ling Yufang's face was extremely ugly. In his plan, he would first use the sect disciples to beat up the Eternal Ancient Sect disciples, and then send the Martial King. He didn't expect that he would lose one by one, and couldn't stop at all. Elder Sunday. Ling Yufang waved his hand and said, go to the battle. Yes. Elder son of Xingan Sect jumped onto the stage, releasing the aura of a 5th grade Martial King. The warriors of Southwest Yangzhou immediately became worried. 5 4th-rate sects sent a total of 10 Martial Kings. Can the Wangdu Sect withstand it? Sect Master Ningduzu, who was always taciturn, said, I will fight. Go. Jun Chang smiled. Swish. Ningduzu landed on the stage and bowed, saying, Elder of the Wangdu Sect, Ningduzu. Ningduzu? Elder son sneered, one of the Ning family thieves from southeast Shizhou? A chicken stealing and dog stealing person can become an elder of the sect. It is really ridiculous. Ningduzu's eyes turned cold. Ling Yufang said, Sect Master Jun, aren't you afraid of being ridiculed by the people in the martial arts world by letting such a person be an elder? The martial artists of Southwest Yangzhou whispered. They had heard a little about the Ning family, thieves from southeast Shizhou, but they didn't expect it to be an elder of the Wangdu Sect. If you let someone with a bad reputation take up an important position in the sect, people will definitely gossip about him. Mr. Ling. Jun Chang smiled and said, don't worry about the people in my sect. Humph. Elder son said indifferently, in my opinion, since Sect Master Jun has recruited such a person, there must be many criminals in the sect. Ningduzu said, if you want to fight, then fight, don't talk nonsense. Elder son said with disdain, if it weren't for the ring, I really don't want to fight with you thieves, so as not to dirty my hands. Swish. Ningduzu couldn't stand it anymore and stepped forward. The strong spiritual energy burst out and immediately formed a dense fist shadow. He was a 5th grade before joining the sect, and he is still a 5th grade now. Although he has not broken through, his strength has increased significantly after taking the body shaping pill, the soul quenching pill, and various tempering. Boom. Boom. On the ring, there was a burst of bombardment. Thump thump thump. Elder son, who was also a 5th grade elder, could not withstand the power of the explosion at all. His air wall was shattered, and he staggered back, looking extremely embarrassed. Bang, just as he stabilized himself, Ningduzu's fist with violent spiritual energy hit him directly in the face. Wow. This group of people fought very vigorously. Not only did Elder Son's blood splatter, but also 2 rows of teeth flew out. Plop. Elder Son fell to the edge of the ring, and he was dizzy. Ningduzu came over and rode on him like an ordinary person fighting, raised his fist and said, I don't mind dirty hands. Boom. Boom. The spiritual energy spread, and the floor shook. After a crazy and violent attack like a rainstorm, Elder Son was beaten into a pig's head by Ningduzu and fainted on the spot. The corners of everyone's mouth twitched. This is a fight at the level of the king of martial arts. In the end, not only did it not stage a wonderful battle, but it was more like an adult bullying a child. Chapter 577, Discussing with Emperor Wu. Plop. Elder Son, who had fainted, was thrown off the ring. Just now he was dissatisfied with his hands getting dirty, but now he didn't mind his face getting dirty, even though his head was on the ground. So, we are all adults now, there is no need to act cool. Sect Master Ningduzu stood on the ring, his hands stained with blood, but he had no intention of getting off, and said, I can still fight. Jun Changxiao touched his nose, and said with a smile, Mr. Ling, continue to send people to fight. Damn it. Ling Yufang's eyes flashed with anger. The martial kings sent out were defeated, which was within the tolerance range, but they couldn't bear to be trampled so easily. I'll do it. Elder Hu of Xingan Sect volunteered. His strength was 2 levels higher than Elder Sun's, and he had reached the 7th grade martial king. Go. Ling Yufang said. Swish. Elder Hu flew up and landed on the stage, saying in a cold voice, Elder of Xingan Sect, Huzaro. Don't talk nonsense. Ningduzu said, let's start. Hoo-hoo. Huzaro spread his hands, and the majestic spiritual energy instantly spread out like a big net. Seeing elder son being abused and unable to fight back, he realized that the opponent was very powerful, so he had to take the initiative first. Spiritual explosion seal. Huzaro shouted loudly, and the spiritual energy that spread out crisscrossed, as if turning into big hands, pressing towards Ningduzu. The explosive power gathered in the spiritual energy, producing matcha with the air, and suddenly there was a creepy sound of crackling. Ningduzu sneered, took 2 steps back, and stretched out his hands. Whoosh! The red power hidden between heaven and earth quickly gathered in his palms, forming a dazzling light. This is 7 mysterious light break. After the Ning brothers joined the Wangu sect, they basically learned all the martial arts they could learn, except for the special martial arts such as Yijinjing. So strong. As expected of our elders, the eyes of the Wangu sect disciples suddenly became hot. They also practiced this advanced martial arts, but they could not be compared with Ningduzu in terms of power. Feeling the 2 red forces, Huzaro frowned slightly, and his hands formed seals again, and the explosive force that rushed over suddenly accelerated. Ningduzu's face was expressionless, and his 10 fingers suddenly stretched straight, and the 2 red energies suddenly turned into beams and shot out. Whoosh, whoosh. The 2 red beams dragged the streamer and rushed into the explosive force in an instant, penetrated at an extremely fast speed, and hit Huzaro's shoulders with incomparable accuracy. This process was too fast. So fast that Huzaro had no time to dodge, until the holes in his shoulders were pierced, and the severe pain spread. His face gradually became hideous. The martial arts released also came to an abrupt end, because of the collapse of his mind. Swish. Ningduzu came in front of Huzaro and said coldly, "Get out." Bang, a punch hit his face, and the whole person flew out gorgeously like a kite with a broken string, and then fell hard to the ground. The warriors watching the battle were all dumbfounded. This second elder of the Zingan sect who went to fight was beaten down so quickly. Mr. Ling. Jun Changxiao shook his head and said, "Since you have come to challenge my Wangu sect, you should show your sincerity instead of letting these shrimp soldiers and crab generals come on stage and embarrass yourself." The corners of everyone's mouth twitched violently. High-grade martial kings are described as shrimp soldiers and crab generals. Sect Master Jun, you are really coquettish. Crack. Ling Yufang clenched his fists and was furious. This time, I came here on my father's orders, to test the newly rising Wangu sect. I thought it would be easy, but I didn't expect it to be so tricky. Everyone. He suppressed his anger and said, "Who will come up to the stage to fight this thief?" Young city lord. The martial emperor sent by the Zingan sect said in a deep voice, "I will go to meet him." Swish. As he spoke, he landed on the ring. Of course. He was not going to fight Ningduzu, but bowed to Jun Changxiao and said, "I heard that sect Master Jun is a rare sword and martial arts king. I really want to learn from him." Jun Chang smiled and said, "Challenge me." "Yes." The martial emperor said. He came here this time not to fight one by one, and then decide the outcome by the victory. As long as he taught this sect master a lesson, it would be equivalent to completing his mission. Xiao Longlong, who was lying under the ring, became energetic and began to prepare for warm-up. "Okay," Jun Changxiao said with a smile, "I will come and compete with the martial emperor." Xiao Longlong was stunned. The master wants to fight the martial emperor himself? Yes. After breaking through to the 4th grade sword and martial arts double queen, Jun Changxiao wanted to try to see how big the gap is between himself and the martial emperor level. Master Jun. Princess Honglian reminded, "This person is called Jetu Hong, one of the only 2 remaining great elders of Zingan sect. His strength should not be underestimated. It is better to send your sect's martial emperor to fight." Does this woman think she can't beat him? Not only Mu Honglian, when Jun Changxiao wanted to take the initiative to fight, the martial artists present did not think they could win. After all, this was a martial emperor level strongman. Such a piece of trash. There is no need for my Wangu sect martial emperor to fight. Master Jun flew up and landed on the ring, howling in his heart. Although Mr. Wenny is a martial emperor, he has no fighting power at all. The disciples of Wangu sect have unlimited potential. But in terms of top strength, it will be very embarrassing if they are not contracted beasts. At the foot of the mountain, there is an open space. Jun Changxiao and Jetu Hong were dozens of feet apart. One was a sword and martial arts king, and the other was a martial emperor, so they didn't fight on the ring, but chose a more spacious area, so that they could fight more freely. The leader of the Wangdu sect was undoubtedly very attractive to fight the martial emperor. Many warriors stood in the distance and stared at him intently, blinking less and less, for fear that they would miss it if they were not careful. Master Jun, Jetu Hong said with his hands behind his back, how should we fight? Let's use fists first. Jun Changxiao said. Okay. Jetu Hong clenched his fists, and the heavy spiritual energy gathered and gradually materialized, as if he was wearing a pair of iron fists. The system said, the strong who have reached the level of martial emperors have a strength of more than 10 million pounds, so the host should be careful. Yes. Jun Changxiao did not dare to be arrogant, and released the spiritual armor, instantly condensing a materialized silver-white battle armor around his body. Under the sunlight, it was brilliant. This guy's not trying to be cool, but hopes to use the dazzling light from the armor and the sun to blind the opponent's titanium dog eyes, and help in the battle. Can we start? Come on. Jun Changxiao said with a smile. But, as soon as the voice fell, the space in front of him shook, and a huge fist appeared out of thin air, carrying a force of 10,000 kilograms. Boom. The earth shook, and violent air waves roared out, like ripples that instantly spread over a range of dozens of feet. The martial artists who were already far enough away felt the momentum, and were so shocked that they all retreated, with horror on their faces. Just now. What happened? Exclamation mark. When the remaining power dissipated, everyone tried to look and saw that Jun Changxiao had already retreated dozens of steps. His legs sunk several inches into the ground, and his hands were in a blocking position. The fighting area. The space is still distorted, and it is difficult to heal in a short time. Jun Changxiao raised his head and grinned, as expected of martial emperor. This punch is powerful. Jetu Hong's eyes were filled with surprise. He was surprised that he could withstand a punch from a distance. It was really beyond his expectation. P.S. I woke up from a nap and found that there is a leader. Thanks to %% for the generous reward. There will be more in the evening. Chapter 578. There is still a gap. Boom. Boom. There were constant explosions on the open grassland, and spiritual energy roared out. All the warriors watching the battle had their eyes wide open, and their eyes were filled with only one emotion, that is, fear. Within the field of vision, Jetu Hong put his hands behind his back, as if he was strolling in the garden. In the void in front of him, huge fists continued to condense and bombard. My god. Can they still fight like this? A martial king said in surprise. The control of spiritual energy by the martial arts emperor is really terrible. Without even moving his hands, he can gather spiritual energy, condense fists in the void, and launch a crazy attack on the leader of the eternal ancient sect. This has given many people a new understanding of fighting. After a while, Tu Hong stopped and smiled. If he could take on his attack like this, even if the boy could, his physical body couldn't bear it. He might have been seriously injured on the ground at this moment. The next second, the smile on his face suddenly solidified. After the sky waves and dust dissipated, Jun Changxiao, wearing silver armor, still stood there, grinning. If this is the martial emperor, then I'm very disappointed. Oh my god. Master Jun is fine. Such a strong force continues to bombard. Even iron bones can't withstand it. Just kidding. Master Jun, who is protected by spiritual armor, can't be hurt by the purest spiritual energy of the martial emperor alone. Jetu Hong said, Master Jun, I will be serious next time. Hoo-hoo. With both hands open, a stream of strong energy gathered in the palm of his hand. Although the amount is not much, it is extremely pure. It's serious. Just now, I just gathered power with spiritual energy. I'm afraid I have to use martial arts this time. The strong at the level of the martial emperor have a far better understanding of martial arts than others. I can't imagine the power of the increase. Several martial kings who were watching the battle whispered. Step. Jun Changxiao stepped out, his eyes flashing with heat. During this period, he always faced various opponents with an invincible attitude. Now that he met the martial emperor, he finally felt the passion that young people should have. You old man, come and fight. With the strong fighting spirit of the owner, the armor became dazzling again. Jetu Hang raised his palms, and the two spiritual energies gathered. Then he waved his right hand with two fingers, and the energy lingered like an elf, saying, long eyebrows and one finger. Whoosh, the slender light penetrated the space at a very fast speed. Just as Jetu Hang made a move, Jun Changxiao burst into hot flames all over his body and quickly gathered together. Red sky flame slash. He shouted angrily, and the flame slash seal condensed in the air went straight up, and the hot power tore through the space, and there was a crackling sound. Boom, the heat wave slash and the small light collided. In an instant, the open space rose in two colors, red and bright white. My eyes. Many warriors covered their eyes and retreated backwards. There was a burning pain near their eye sockets, as if they were burned by flames. This feeling of pain did not last long. After everyone gradually recovered, they tried to stare and saw that the space in the battle zone had been distorted to the extreme. Hiss. Everyone gasped. Wait. Where is Jun Changxiao? Many warriors saw the situation in the field clearly, but only found Jetu Hang, who was stunned, but not Jun Changxiao. In the sky, someone exclaimed. Swish. Everyone looked up in sync, and saw Jun Changxiao, who was wearing armor, soaring into the air, with a green sword in his hand, shouting, flood the seven armies. Swish. Swish. The King Lang Yanyu sword was swung wildly, and several hot swords whistled out. The power of each blow was quite explosive. Humph. Jetu Hang sneered. In the void, the fists gathered again, directly breaking all the flaming blade energy that was attacking. Step. Jun Changxiao fell to the ground, holding the azure dragon crescent blade in one hand. Hoo-hoo, a stream of colorful attributes suddenly emerged from the blade, and the mighty martial saint emerged. Weapon soul. Everyone exclaimed. Jetu Hang's eyes suddenly became solemn. It turned out that the rumors were true. This guy really had a weapon with a weapon spirit. No wonder the leader of the Strongest Sect was defeated. Swish. Jun Changxiao rushed over quickly. In the process, the blade of the azure dragon crescent blade changed from green to red, blue, earth color, and gold. The martial saint's soul that followed closely behind was also changing. The two were colorful. Jetu Hang frowned. At that moment, he felt that the world was filled with 5 attributes, so he exclaimed, 5-element weapon spirit. Swish. Jun Changxiao flew into the air, holding his sword horizontally, and shouted, alone, in collusion, walking alone, and enlightened. Swish. 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 The sword energy, that was like a painting, fell down fiercely. Ka. The space was ruthlessly cut apart. Stimulate the martial soul, and stimulate the 5-element. These few swords were definitely the strongest burst of Jun Changxiao and the King Lang Yanyu sword, which could be seen from his ferocious face. But, reality is cruel. Jetu Hang's robe rose without wind, and the incomparably strong spiritual energy spread out instantly, as if blocking the entire space. The falling sword energy was not only forcibly slowed down, but also greatly weakened. Break. Bang. 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 The sword energy containing the power of the 5-element directly collapsed under the compression of space. Jun Changxiao, who had not yet fallen, was immediately shaken away, and then staggered backwards. The King Lang Yanyu sword was inserted into the ground, stopping the retreat. No way. The martial emperor is too strong. Even if the King Lang Yanyu sword has been hit with the 5-element attribute, even if the soul of the martial saint is stimulated, there is still a gap. The system said, the difference between the martial king and the martial emperor is not only strength, but also the understanding of the world. The host wants to win by leaps and bounds with the 4th grade cultivation. It is really a fantasy. Fantastic. Jun Chang smiled. Whoosh, in an instant, a stream of extremely cold and fierce sword energy spread from his body, and instantly rushed in all directions. Jetu Hang said lightly, do you want to use the power of the Sword King? Old man. Jun Changxiao, who was in the sword energy, said proudly, I have a sword move that can cut the stars above and cut the rivers below. Do you dare to take it? Why not? Jetu Hang sneered. Jun Changxiao put his hands behind his back, and his clothes fluttered in the cold and fierce wind. The sword energy that spread out became more intense. At that moment, many warriors felt that this guy seemed to be getting sharper and sharper, as if he had become a sharp sword that was about to be unsheathed. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Under the sword energy, many warriors' swords trembled. When they wanted to hold it down with their hands, they heard a clang, and the sword flew out directly. Clang, clang. The sound of sword energy coming out of the sheath rang out one after another. Jetuhan was startled, and subconsciously looked back, and saw a dense mass of sharp swords, forming a sword rain, flying over his head. He widened his eyes. Clang, clang. The swords of the disciples of the eternal ancient sect flew over from another direction. For a moment, thousands of sharp swords were suspended in the sky behind Jun Changxiao, exuding an extremely sharp momentum. Why did my sword fly out? I can't control it at all. This sword move, Jun Changxiao has performed in the royal city. The strong man from Xianyu royal city remembered the scene of Jun Changxiao and our Angli fighting. Looking at Jetuhan with thousands of swords suspended, his eyes became solemn, and he said in a deep voice, Jun Changxiao, what sword move is this? 10,000 swords return to one. Swish, swish, swish. Thousands of sharp swords flashed with light, and instantly gathered together, forming a giant sword like a mountain peak, to slash at Jetuhan. Swish, the giant sword fell, and the sword force burst out. Jetuhan's face changed drastically, because a sword force that seemed to be from the martial emperor's key domain instantly restrained him. All he could do at this moment was to bite the bullet, and take the attack. P.S. Maybe because I haven't recovered from my cold yet, I always feel like I can't get into the state when writing at the point where Sect Master Jun is showing off. Well, our most powerful sect in the ages also has a leader. Chapter 579 shocked the Emperor Wu. Thousands of sharp swords gathered together, like towering mountains reaching into the sky, emitting supreme sword power. Everyone present held their breath, their eyes filled with horror. That moment, this scene, will be forever imprinted in their hearts, and they will never forget it. Whoosh, the giant sword slashed down, and the sword power burst out. The martial emperor level Jetuhan was bound by the sword power, and could not dodge, so he could only take it head on. Ah! He roared angrily, stimulating all his cultivation. The void in front of him instantly rippled, and a series of materialized barriers condensed. Defenses fully open, just to welcome the return of all swords. Being able to force the martial emperor to this point, even if Jun Changxiao's sword failed to defeat his opponent, it was enough to prove himself. Whoosh, the sword power rippled, and the world lost its color. As everyone watched in shock, the giant sword fell down with a bang, and collided fiercely with the first barrier, condensed by Jetuhan. Bang. Broken. Bang. The second one was broken again. Bang. 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 In an instant, the three subsequent defensive barriers were also broken. The might of the giant sword was unstoppable. Puff. Jetuhan spurted blood. At this moment, there was only one barrier left in front of him, but under the sword's power, it was like a candle in the wind, and it could be extinguished at any time. Not allowed. Never allowed. Jetuhan opened his eyes wide, and raised his hands suddenly. Whoosh, the last spiritual energy in the Danshan, was all stimulated to strengthen the strength of the barrier, just to defend the dignity of martial emperor. Boom. The giant sword came down like a mountain collapsing. Whoosh, the violent sword intent was madly disturbing the surroundings, as if it turned into an invisible sickle, sweeping across the empty grassland. The weeds within a radius of 1,000 feet were harvested close to the ground, the stones were flattened, and the big trees showed sword marks, and then they were cut off horizontally. The warriors watching the battle were far enough away, otherwise, they would definitely be strangled by the sword intent. Oh my god. This is too scary. Everyone was terrified, and subconsciously stepped back a lot. Another martial emperor in Xianzhou looked very solemn. He really couldn't imagine that the leader of the Wangdu sect would have such a powerful sword move. If he were to resist it, he would definitely be in a very bad situation. Catcher, the sound of shattering suddenly sounded in the silent environment. Although everyone didn't see it at the first time, they could guess that the last barrier condensed by Jetuhan must have been broken. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, a series of sharp swords dragged the stream of light, flew up, and once again hung above Jun Changxiao, flashing a dazzling light. Opposite, Jetuhan stood in place. Although he was still standing, his hands had already dropped, his face was extremely pale, and the whole person seemed to be exhausted. He was only slightly injured in resisting the 10,000 swords returning to 1, but his energy was also consumed by 889. Jun Changxiao raised his lips and said, "You lose." Jetu Hang exhaled, bowed with difficulty and said, "Thank you, Master Jun, for showing mercy." After the last defensive barrier he had condensed was broken, the power of the sword was still very strong, and it could have flown down. However, it suddenly disintegrated at the moment of falling, and then turned into a stream of light and flew back. Jetu Hang knew that this was intentional by the opponent, otherwise, if he was exhausted and took that sword, he would definitely die or be injured. Jun Changxiao said, "It's just a discussion of the Tao, not a life and death battle system." After this guy used the 10,000 swords return to 1, the spiritual energy in the two spiritual cores was almost consumed. He didn't cut it down in the end, and he deliberately created a look of stopping. Unexpectedly, that guy really believed it. "Mr. Ling," Jun Changxiao said, "you can let another martial emperor continue to fight, and I will accompany you to the end. Want to fight the martial emperor again? Awesome." The warriors of Yangzhou in the southwest cast admiring and awe-inspiring eyes. In his own territory, he defeated the martial emperor of the Yangzhou and convinced him. What a proud feeling. Elder Liu. Ling Yufang said, "Let's fight." The martial emperor named Liu Shanking twitched his mouth slightly. The leader of the Wangu sect looked like nothing had happened. The thousands of sharp swords were still hanging in the air. If he had another move, he would definitely not be able to withstand it. Young city lord. Liu Shanking said, "The sect master Jun is only at the king level after all. If I fight him again, I will be ridiculed by the people in the martial arts world." The strength of the 10,000 swords returning to 1 shocked the martial emperor and made him lose the courage to fight. Of course, Liu Shanking didn't think that 2 martial emperors would fight against a king level and be laughed at by others, but that 2 martial emperors would be laughed at by others if they couldn't beat a king level. People who have reached a certain realm and are of a certain age must be very concerned about their reputation. And this just so happened to give Jun Chang a way out. He said, "In this case, then continue to challenge my disciples of the eternal ancient sect." Whoosh, whoosh. The diffuse sword energy dissipated, and thousands of sharp swords hanging in the air flew towards their respective masters. Damn it. Ling Yufang was furious. I thought that this time, it would be a simple matter to come to Southwest Yangzhou on my father's orders. I didn't expect that the eternal ancient sect was so difficult that even the martial emperor couldn't do anything about it. Sect master. Suzaomo volunteered. Disciple wants to fight with this young masterling from the king city. He had long disliked Ling Yufang. Jun Chang smiled and said, "It depends on whether masterling is interested." Masterling. Suzaomo smiled and said, "Can you come on stage and fight me?" Before Ling Yufang could speak, he said, "If you don't want to, I won't force you. After all, the people we sent have lost so many games, and you won't make a difference." This was a bit naughty. Ling Yufang, who was arrogant, suddenly looked angry. Senior brother Su. Li Fei smiled and said, "You can't underestimate Master Ling. If he didn't have the ability, how could he become the young master of the royal city? It's hard to say." Suzaomo said, "Some people are born into a good family and have a good father. Even if they don't have the ability, they can still make a good living." Catcher. Ling Yufang clenched his fists tightly, and his anger erupted. What he couldn't stand the most was being thought of as relying on his father. The truth? It really was. Jun Changxiao bowed and said, "My 2 disciples are talking nonsense. Master Ling, don't bother with them. Besides, what's wrong with relying on your father? Others want to rely on you, but can't pass the exam." The corners of everyone's mouth twitched. "Master Jun, you are deliberately provoking Master Ling. Why don't you apologize to Master Ling quickly?" Jun Changxiao said in a deep voice. Suzaomo and Li Fei bowed and said, "Master Ling, we are wrong. You have a good father. You are amazing." The 2 of them sang in unison, making Ling Yufang's nose almost crooked. In the end, he couldn't control his emotions and shouted angrily, "Okay, I'll meet the disciples of the eternal sect. I can't stand it anymore. I must go to war." I must let others know that I rely on myself, not my father. Young city lord Liu Shanking wanted to dissuade him, but Ling Yufang said in a deep voice, I've made up my mind. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 580, Lord Jun is mighty, the Eternal Sect is mighty. I have made up my mind. These 4 words were said very decisively, indicating that Ling Yufang was really angry and had to prove with his strength that he did not rely on his father. Liu was very upset. He was obviously deliberately provoking him, and he was still looking stupid. Isn't he asking for trouble? The city lord is so wise and powerful, how could he give birth to such a bastard? Of course. He only dared to think in his heart, and dared not say it out loud. Okay. Jun Chang smiled and said, Xiaomu, just fight with Masterling. Yes. Suzaomo jumped onto the ring. Before warming up, the disciples of the Eternal Ancient Sect sent messages one after another. Senior brother Su, you must beat this guy up. He just grew up with that arrogance, which makes people very uncomfortable. He must be beaten half to death. It's better to beat him to death. The reason why everyone hated him so much was that Ling Yufang deliberately called the Eternal Ancient Sect the Strongest Sect. It has to be said. In terms of attracting hatred, this guy is comparable to Jun Changxiao. Swish. Ling Yufang landed on the stage, his eyes flashing with anger. If his eyes could kill, I believe Suzaomo would have been torn into pieces long ago. The one who came on stage is the inner disciple of the Eternal Ancient Sect. He must be very powerful. Can Master Ling win? I heard that this young city lord Ling's qualifications are not very high. His father used many natural treasures to help him shape his meridians. Hey, this is good luck. This is a good birth. The whispers of the warriors in Yangzhou, southwest, were heard by Ling Yufang, and his anger was even stronger. Why do they care about having a father, and no one cares about their efforts over the years? Could it be that, just because of their birth, all their efforts and contributions will be wiped out and blamed on having a good father? This is unfair to me. Hoo-hoo. Burning with anger, Ling Yufang released his martial arts cultivation and said in a low voice, I want you to know that I can become the young city lord and have the current cultivation because of myself. How to compare? Suzaomo smiled. Ling Yufang, who had fully developed his cultivation, proudly said, let's compare weapons. Swish. As he spoke, he gently raised his right hand, and a sword engraved with a dragon beast appeared. Although it had not been unsheathed, it was sharp. 3-foot wandering dragon sword. My god, this is one of the personal swords of City Lord Ling. The quality has reached the highest level. I didn't expect that he would give it to his son. Everyone looked at him with envy. Liu Shanking and Jetu Han looked strange. As martial emperors, they didn't have such a weapon that was close to a holy item. Sure enough, having a good father is awesome. Ling Yufang, who wanted to prove himself urgently, sacrificed the sword given by his father. This was quite ironic. Come on. Suzaomo said, let's start. Where is your weapon? Bare hands are enough to deal with a rookie like you. Arrogant. Ling Yufang's eyes turned cold, and he immediately grabbed the hilt of the sword. With a clang, the 3-foot wandering dragon sword worth 2 silver pieces came out of the sheath. This sword is 3 feet long, with a white blade. When it is unsheathed, it seems as if there is a dragon's roar. It is really a very good weapon. Even a strong person with good strength may not be able to buy it, even if he has money. Swish. Ling Yufang poured spiritual energy into the sword body and suddenly slashed it in the void, instantly dragging a cold and unparalleled sword energy. Suzaomo stepped on the tiptoe, stepped on the mysterious steps to bypass, and then appeared behind him and kicked directly. Bang! Ling Yufang had no time to dodge and was kicked directly on the shoulder, holding the sword and retreating backwards. Swish! Suzaomo followed with a big step, poured spiritual energy into her right foot, and immediately launched a dazzling bombardment. Bang! 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 In an instant, Ling Yufang was hit hard in the chest and staggered back to the edge of the ring. He was only a 4th grade martial arts master, and even if he had a high grade sword, he would be completely defeated in front of Suzaomo, who was a peak martial arts master. Damn it. Ling Yufang injured the pain and angrily used his sword skills, and immediately a dense array of sword shadows intertwined in front of him. This is also a high level sword technique, which was prepared by City Lord Ling for his son. Unfortunately, Ling Yufang's aptitude is not outstanding. Even if he learns sword skills, even if he has a high quality sword, it is difficult to exert his true power. Swish, swish. Suzaomo was at full speed, dodging left and right on the ring, avoiding the cold and sharp sword energy, and then went around in front of Ling Yufang and kicked him on the wrist. Swish. The 3-foot dragon sword flew out of his hand and spun and stuck in the ground. Liu Shanking shook his head. He was not surprised by this result. To put it bluntly, City Lord Ling Xiao only respected him because he had an awesome father. If he didn't have this relationship, he would have absolutely no sense of existence in the crowd. Damn it. Ling Yufang's eyes were about to burst. He had such a strong sword and sword skills. Why couldn't he beat the disciples of the Eternal Ancient Sect? This question was very simple. He had a good father. Suzaomo and the others had a good sect master. You have countless resources and rich martial arts? Sorry, these disciples of the Eternal Ancient Sect have them. If he had to find a little advantage, Ling Yufang would only be the young city lord and could show off. Of course. If he had to choose between young city lord and disciple of the Eternal Ancient Sect, Suzaomo and the others would definitely choose the latter, because in their hearts, disciples of the Eternal Ancient Sect are priceless treasures. Is this the end? No. After kicking Ling Yufang's weapon away, Suzaomo did not give him the opportunity to surrender or jump off the ring. She punched him so hard that he was dizzy and then began to destroy him. Bang, bang, bang. The corners of the martial artists watching the fight twitched and finally turned their heads away without being able to bear to watch. Master Jun. Princess Hanglian whispered. After all, he is the young city lord of Lingtengking City. Just teach him a lesson. Don't go too far. Jun Chang smiled and said, it is because he is the young city lord that we must abuse him ruthlessly so that the world will know that my Wangu sect is not someone who can be easily provoked. Princess Hanglian was silent. Boom. Another heavy punch came down and the abused Ling Yufang fainted with his head tilted. His whole face was swollen and even his parents might not recognize him. Pa. Suzaomo clapped her hands and said, thank you. Liu Shanking and Jetu Han looked ugly, but they didn't say anything from beginning to end. After all, this was a battle on the ring. Since they went up, they could only blame their inferior skills for being abused. You too. Jun Chang smiled and said, if you still want to learn martial arts, you can continue to go on stage. My Wangu sect does not refuse anyone. The masters of the 5 4th-rate sects were silent one by one. Even the martial emperor was defeated. The Wangu sect is too strong. If they continue to challenge, they will only be embarrassed. Master Jun. Liu Shanking bowed and said, as expected of a top 3 sect, we have learned a lesson today. I will leave without interrupting you any longer. After losing so many games, even the martial emperor did not win. What face do they have left? Therefore, it is best to leave. I'm sorry I won't see you off. Jun Chang smiled and bowed. Liu Shanking ordered his disciples to lift up the unconscious Ling Yufang and left in disgrace under the eyes of the martial artists of Southwest Yangzhou. He was very arrogant when he came and very embarrassed when he left. Today, 5 4th-rate sects in Xianzhou were defeated by the Wangu sect. Today, a martial artist from Southwest Yangzhou shouted loudly from the bottom of his heart, Master Jun is mighty, and the Wangu sect is mighty. Master Jun is mighty. The Wangu sect is mighty. Everyone shouted in unison, and the sound echoed in the sky. The plaque hanging above the hall, with the words Iron Bones written on it, shone brightly under the sun. Master Jun. Princess Hanglian smiled and said, if my father knew about this, he would be very happy. Jun Changxiao didn't hear what she said, nor did he hear the shouts of the crowd, because his ears were covered by the reminder sound of the task completed. Chapter 581, 3 levels up. Ding. The side quest is completed, and 5,000 contribution points are obtained. Ding. Contribution value. 15,000/20,000 point. Ding. Congratulations to the host for completing the side quest, triggering the hidden reward, and obtaining 3 experience symbols, and 1 holy qualification transformation liquid. Jun Changxiao was overjoyed. This side quest actually gave 3 experience symbols. However, at this moment, a reminder sounded again in his ear. Congratulations to the host for triggering the hidden goods, obtaining the 1st grade sword qualification liquid, the 1st grade formation qualification liquid, and the purchase right of the Wu Wang pill formula, which have been added to the purchased items column. Jun Changxiao's expression was dull. The next second, he almost flew up with excitement. The purchase right of the sword formation qualification liquid. This is definitely not cool. And, the Wu Wang pill formula. No more. Jun Zhang's excited little heart almost stopped beating. Swish. He hurriedly opened the purchased items column, and sure enough, he saw 2 more qualification liquids and Wu Wang pill formulas out of thin air. Haha. Ahahaha. Jun Changxiao squatted on the ground, covered his face and laughed wildly, quite like Stephen Chow in Flirting Scholar. Princess Han Lian said, Master Jun, what's wrong with you? Princess. Li Qingyang said seriously, Master sometimes can't help laughing. As a disciple, he has seen Jun Changxiao's sudden laughter for no reason many times, and has long been accustomed to it. Oh. Princess Han Lian responded, and thought to herself, is this a disease? If it is a disease, Jun Changxiao would rather be terminally ill and incurable. 10 years ago, City Lord Mu took the masters to Xiantao, but was shaved bald. He was so angry that he vomited blood on the spot and took a long time to recover. It was a humiliating battle. For a long time, City Lord Mu and the martial artists of Southwest Yangzhou could not raise their heads, and they were heartbroken every time they thought of it. To this day, at the foot of Tigu Mountain, Jun Changxiao and his disciples shaved the heads of the 5 major sects in Xiantao, defeated the martial emperor, and abused the young city lord of Lingtengking City. They were so proud. For a while, many warriors ran around to tell each other, as if the whole world was celebrating. Good. After Long Potian of the Long family in Langyang City learned about this, he slapped the table and stood up, laughing. Master Jun has vented the anger for my Southwest Yangzhou. Teacher Jun is so amazing. I really want to graduate quickly and join the Wangu sect. The students of Xianyu Academy were also arguing, and their admiration for Jun Changxiao became even stronger. Ha ha ha. Yi Xiangxing laughed and said, it's so satisfying, so satisfying. Although he is the certified head of the general hall, and must always remain neutral, he has been living in Southwest Yangzhou after all. Now, the sects in the state must be happy to abuse the sects in other states. What's more, in the past, the sects in their own state went out to be abused by others, but this time, they abuse the outsiders at their own doorstep. This is absolutely refreshing. It's decided. Yi Xiangxing said, the next Dragon and Tiger contest will be held by the Eternal Sect on behalf of Southwest Yangzhou. This, Elder Zhao, Elder Zen and others were stunned. They didn't expect that the owner of the hall, who had been hesitating all the time, would suddenly make a decision. Elder Zhao, Yi Xiangxing said, go to the Eternal Sect and tell them about this in person, so that Sect Master Jun can actively prepare in the next 2 years. Yes. Elder Zhao hurriedly left. Yi Xiangxing put one hand on the table and murmured, Sect Master Jun, I hope you can represent the certification hall in Southwest Yangzhou and get good results in the Dragon and Tiger contest in 2 years. The outside world's discussion about the Eternal Sect is getting more and more intense. As the person involved, Jun Changxiao locked himself in the room and took out 3 experience talismans. Pa. Whoosh, the spiritual energy in the Tu spirit cores instantly became boiling. A moment. The momentum emanating from Jun Changxiao's body became stronger, and his realm also stepped from the 4th grade to the 5th grade. Breaking through the 4th level took a lot of time and contribution points. Now I can upgrade with just 1 experience charm. This is really cool. Snap. Snap. Jun Changxiao crushed 2 more experience charms one after another, and his realm broke through from the 5th level to the 7th level. I'm Jun Changxiao. He walked out of the room, exhaled, and said, no cheating. System, a decent person. Bang. Coming to the training room, Jun Changxiao punched the test machine, and the power displayed was 11.5 million Jin. It's over 10 million. Pa. Jun Changxiao covered his face and laughed again. He only had the second stage of opening meridians when he traveled through time, but now he has entered the 7th grade sword martial arts double king and has 11.5 million Jin of explosive power. This is my growth. This is my change. Ask loudly, who else? Sect Master Jun is floating, his feet are off the ground, and his viruses are all turned off. However, for a side quest, except for the small contribution value, the reward is too generous. The system said, this is because the system has been upgraded to version 2.0. Some elite side quests are not inferior to the epic quests of the past. Jun Chang smiled and said, so, if you enter the Peak Sword and Martial Arts Double King and trigger the epic quest, will the rewards be richer after completing it? Yes. The system paused and added, similarly, the difficulty will also increase accordingly. Oh. Jun Chang smiled and responded, opened the purchased items column, clicked on the first grade sword qualification liquid, glanced at the function introduction, and directly put it on price. 5,000 contribution points. Oh my god. A first grade one is so expensive. He hurriedly clicked on the first grade formation qualification liquid, and the purchase price was also 5,000 contribution points. Sect Master Jun was speechless. Now he has 15,000 contribution points, and he feels that he is already rich. If he goes to buy this qualification liquid, he can only buy 3 bottles at most. Too bad. Jun Changxiao pointed at the Wu Wang pill formula and said that, after taking this pill, a warrior can directly break through from the peak of Wu Zhang to Wu Wang. Awesome. Are there any side effects? Yes. The disadvantages are clearly written. Wu Wang is already a very high level in the mortal continent. In order to maintain the balance between heaven and earth, a warrior will reduce his lifespan by 100 years after taking it. Jun Changxiao said, this is using his life to break through. The Wu Wang pill formula is reasonably priced, requiring only 2,000 contribution points. However, considering that he would need to exchange it for 100 years of life, Sect Master Jun did not decide whether to buy it for a while, but started to investigate first. King Guiyang, if I give you a chance to break through to the Martial King, but you have to sacrifice 100 years of life, are you willing? I'm willing. Zuji, what about you? Master, of course I'm willing. Why? After a great realm breakthrough, the lifespan will also increase a lot. Losing 100 years of lifespan is nothing at all. That's right. Jun Changxiao slapped his forehead and suddenly realized, as the great realm is improved, the lifespan of the warrior will also increase. What is there to worry about if the lifespan is reduced by 100 years? The lifespan of the creatures in the Xinjiang continent is already high. It is not excessive to exchange 100 years for the achievement of the Martial King. The system collapsed and said, so what is the purpose of the Martial King pill's shortcomings? Chapter 582, Sect Master Jun is angry. It takes 100 years to break through the Wu Wang, and after the realm is upgraded, the lifespan will be increased. This reduction and supplementation, there is no change at all. Buy. Jun Changxiao spent 2,000 contribution points to buy the Wu Wangdan formula, and automatically matched it in the Danyao pavilion. When he was about to check what medicinal materials he needed, Suzaomo came to report, Master, Elder Zhao from the certification hall is here to see you. Jun Changxiao said, please come. Elder Zhao entered the hall, first said some polite words, and then told him the purpose of his visit. Dragon and tiger battle? Jun Changxiao had never heard of it. The system said, this is the highest standard sect competition in Xinjiang continent. Oh. Jun Changxiao shook his head and said, Elder Zhao, I just want to develop the sect peacefully, and I have no interest in this kind of competition. Well, I'm not interested. If there is a task, he will be more active than anyone else. Master Jun. Elder Zhao said, it is absolutely an honor for the Wongu sect to represent Southwest Yangzhou in the Dragon and Tiger contest held every 5 years. Elder Zhao, do you think my sect lacks honor now? No, it has plenty. At this time, the Wongu sect is definitely known in Southwest Yangzhou. What's more, when the news of the victory over the 5 sects in Xianzhou spreads, it will definitely cause heated discussions in other states. Elder Zhao sighed and said, in this case, I can only take 50,000 spirit stones back to the museum owner. Wait. Jun Changxiao leaned forward and squinted his eyes and said, 50,000 spirit stones? Elder Zhao said, the museum owner paid out of his own pocket to give the Eternal Ancient Sect 50,000 spirit stones for the development of the sect, so as to cope with the dragon and tiger contest in 2 years. Since Sect Master Jun will not participate, I can only take it back intact. Jun Changxiao slapped the table and said, it is an honor for my Eternal Ancient Sect to represent Southwest Yangzhou. Elder Zhao, please go back and tell the museum owner that I'm willing to lead my disciples to fight in the dragon and tiger contest. Elder Zhao was stunned. At that moment, he felt a light flashing behind Sect Master Jun's head, as if he was a sage who saved all living beings. The voice of contempt from the system echoed in his ears for a long time. Since the certification hall valued it so much and asked the Eternal Ancient Sect to participate in the Dragon Art contest, Jun Changxiao had no reason to refuse. It has nothing to do with spirit stones. It's about being from Southwest Yangzhou. After sending off Elder Zhao, Jun Changxiao checked the space ring containing the spirit stones, feeling happy. Sect Master Jiangzi said, are you really going to participate in the Dragon and Tiger contest? Yes. Jun Changxiao said with a smile. Jiangzi said solemnly, this is the highest level sect competition in Xingqiu continent. There will be countless sects participating, and it is said that there will be disciples from first class sects participating. Really? Jun Changxiao immediately became interested. If it weren't for the spirit stones, he really had no intention of participating, but since there are first class sects participating, it will definitely be very grand. In this case, how can my Wangu sect be absent? The Dragon and Tiger contest is the highest level sect competition in Xingqiu continent, held every 5 years, and there are still 2 years to the next session. Southwest Yangzhou will send a sect to participate in each session, but because its strength is not comparable to that of the major states, there is only one quota, and it is just a soy sauce if it goes, and it has been eliminated in the first round in previous sessions. So it's a slap? Jun Changxiao said with a smile. Jiangzi said, in fact, the sects sent by our Southwest Yangzhou in each session are all quite good. In the last session, we sent the only third-rate sect, but it was defeated by a fourth-rate sect in the first round. Really? Jun Changxiao said in surprise, a third-rate sect can't beat a fourth-rate sect? Jiangzi said, in theory, the third rate is stronger than the fourth rate, but the sect that represented Southwest Yangzhou in the last session was unlucky and met the fourth rate sect of Zhangzhou and was beaten terribly. Jun Changxiao was silent. It turned out to be a fourth rate sect from Zhangzhou, which is understandable. Although the forces on the Xingqiu continent are divided into levels, the real factor that determines their strength is still based on geographical factors. The sects born in a large state with extremely strong heaven and earth attributes and outstanding people must be stronger than those in remote areas in terms of strength. As the center of the continent, Zhangzhou is absolutely full of masters and rich in resources. Not to mention that a fourth-rate sect defeated a third-rate sect from another state. Even a sixth-rate sect can defeat a fifth-rate sect. So, the level of a sect is only a standard. Whether it is strong or not depends on where it comes from. For example, the 5 fourth-rate sects in Xianzhou that challenge the Wangu sect must be stronger than the fourth-rate sects in Yangzhou in the southwest. That's right. When Jun Changxiao and his disciples defeated them and shaved their heads, the warriors in the state were excited. This gold content is very high, it seems. Jun Changxiao touched his nose and said, it's a bit difficult to win the championship of the Dragon and Tiger competition. More than difficult. Jiangzi said seriously, with the current strength of my Wangu sect, it is absolutely difficult. It's okay, it's okay. Jun Changxiao said, there are still 2 years to make the sect stronger. When the time comes to participate in this grand sect competition, we must win the first place. Jiangzi was stunned. The Ning brothers were also stunned. Winning the Dragon and Tiger contest was a very big goal. In the martial arts arena, 10,000 disciples stood in a neat line, full of vigor. Jun Changxiao stood at the entrance of the hall and said, "Do you have the confidence to win the dragon and tiger contest in 2 years?" "Yes," the disciples shouted in unison. "Okay." Jun Changxiao said, "Disband and practice." Swish. Sitting in the study, he pulled out the panel of the pill pavilion and tapped on the Wu Wang pill, and the required medicinal materials appeared immediately. Wow. More than 50 kinds are needed. And judging from the names of the medicinal materials, they are all very precious. Jun Changxiao said, "Sure enough, it is not easy to make disciples break through to the Wu Wang." He wrote down the medicinal materials on a piece of paper and handed them to the purchasing hall to purchase. Sect Master Suzaomo walked in. Pa. Jun Changxiao put the holy product qualification transformation liquid rewarded by the task on the table and said, "Take it to improve your spiritual roots." Suzaomo was delighted and said, "Thank you, Sect Master." As he said that, he opened the qualification liquid and swallowed it, and his spiritual roots went from the best to the holy product. In this way, 4 disciples of the Eternal Ancient Sect have upgraded their spiritual roots to the holy product level by relying on their qualifications. A few days later, the people from the purchasing hall returned one after another, but none of the medicinal materials for refining the Wu Wang pill were bought, which was very rare. However, a batch of seeds were purchased from the AI family. Old Wei. Jun Changxiao said, "How long will it take to plant them?" Old Wei pondered for a moment and said, "The seeds provided by the sect master are very rare, and the maturity period is probably at least about half a year." "Half a year? Although it is a bit long," Jun Changxiao said, "then let Old Wei worry more." Sect Master. At this time, Li Luoqiu came to report, saying, "The spies have spread to Luzhou in the northeast, and a bad intelligence has been sent." "Speak." Jun Changxiao said. Li Luoqiu hesitated for a moment and said, "Lu Qian is wanted by the northeast Luzhou Extreme Cold Palace. She also fought with the opponent's strong men in the Boundless Ice Sea. Now her whereabouts are unknown." A violent sword fighting momentum emerged in the hall, instantly spreading throughout the sect, and many disciples were surprised. "What's going on?" Suzaomo and others looked confused. Li Qingyang frowned and said, "The sect master is angry." Zhu Ringui. Jun Changxiao's angry voice rang out in the sect, "Call 1,000 soldiers, and follow me to the northeast Luzhou." "Yes." Swish. 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 In an instant, the members of the Wolf Riders Hall who were practicing were fully armed. PS. Today is the 4th update. I have to go out tomorrow for something, so I will update 2 first, and I have to come back at night to update. Please approve it. Chapter 583. Where is Snow Valley? The members of the Wolf Riders Hall, who were still training, instantly entered a state of combat readiness. Perhaps influenced by the aura of the sect master, they rode on the Hurricane Wolf with a strong murderous look on their faces. Long Xiang, Yang Yuhua and others came galloping in the cloud steppe and landed neatly on the martial arts field. Including Yi Xingchen, all 20 inner disciples of the Eternal Ancient Sect were in place. "Brother," Suzaomo whispered, "what's going on?" Li Qingyang said, "The senior sister was bullied in Luzhou, northeast China." "What?" Suzaomo, Li Fei and others were immediately furious. "Dare to bully our senior sister, this is a bold move." Li, an eagle cry came from the Iron Bone Mountain. "I only saw that the demon ridge black eagle, as big as a mountain, spread its wings and took off. It is defined as the guardian spirit beast of the Eternal Ancient Sect, and it will not easily appear unless the sect is in danger." Puff. Puff. The demon ridge black eagle was suspended above the martial arts field. Swish. Jun Changxiao walked out of the hall in anger, then flew up and landed on the head of the contracted beast and said in a deep voice, "Let's go." Awoo, awoo. The disciples rode the hurricane wolves and turned into streams of light, galloping along the mountain road. Li, the Black Hawk of Demon Ridge, flew to the endless sky. This time when he went to Luzhou in the northeast, Jun Zhangzu not only brought 1,000 wolf cavalrymen, but also brought the Ning brothers and all the inner disciples. The formation was quite large. Jiangzi did not go, and was responsible for managing the sect. Master Li and some members of Xiaotang also went with them, with the purpose of exploring intelligence faster, and finding out Lu Qian's location. On this day, The elite of the Eternal Ancient Sect were all out. The dragon has a reverse scale, and touching it means death. Every disciple of the Eternal Ancient Sect is Jun Changxiao's reverse scale, so anyone who dares to bully will pay a heavy price. What's more, it's Liu Qian, the eldest disciple. It can be imagined that when Jun Changxiao leads his disciples to northeast Luzhou, it will surely set off a bloody storm. Dean, the vice dean of Xianyu Academy, hurried over and said, "I just got the news that Jun Changxiao left Qingyang County with a large number of disciples." "Oh." Sita Haoan said, "Where did he go?" The vice dean said, "Judging from the route, it seems that he went to northeast Luzhou." "Northeast Luzhou?" Sita Haoan frowned and said, "What are you going there for?" Dean. Princess Hanglian hurried over and frowned. "I just received news that Liu Qian, the eldest disciple of the Eternal Ancient Sect, was wanted by the Extreme Cold Palace in northeast Luzhou." The vice dean said, "Could it be that the boy took people to northeast Luzhou because of this matter?" Sita Haoan frowned and said, "This may be a bit bad." "What?" At the certification headquarters, Yi Xiangxing, who got the news, stood up and said in surprise, "Master Jun is leading people to northeast Luzhou with murderous intent?" "Yes." Elder Zen said, "It seems that the disciples of the sect have been bullied." Yi Xiangxing frowned. He knew very well that Jun Changxiao was very protective of his disciples. When the evil sect of Huaiang County bullied his disciples, he directly killed them into the territory and killed 4 of them. This time, some disciples were bullied in northeast Luzhou, so it was normal to lead people to kill them. "That's northeast Luzhou." Yi Xiangxing collapsed and said, "If we rashly take the disciples to kill them, it may affect the power of the entire state." "No, no." He hurriedly ordered, "The 4 of you go quickly, and don't let Master Jun have any accidents." "Yes." On this day, the masters of Xianyu Academy and Certification Center left Xianyu King City one after another, and the place they went to was Luzhou in the northeast. "Have you heard that yesterday, someone saw a large number of disciples of the Eternal Sect riding wolves in the wild, and it looked like they were going to a war?" Warriors in Yangzhou in the southwest were vying to discuss. The Eternal Sect has become famous recently, and its every move will be infinitely magnified. The Demon Sect and the God-Killing Temple also received the news, and knew that the Eternal Sect went to Luzhou in the northeast to seek justice for its disciples. "Humph." The chief helmsman sneered. "Does that guy think that he can run rampant in the Starfall continent with the protection of 2 major organizations? Although Luzhou in the northeast is a land of ice and snow, the ice attribute is extremely strong. The Extreme Cold Palace is formed entirely by ice martial artists. Although it is only a 4th-rate sect, it is not necessarily weaker than a 3rd-rate sect." A subordinate said, "If the Wangu sect goes to kill recklessly, it will definitely be beaten to a pulp. So that's why." The great helmsman laughed and said, "He is still too young. He gets carried away when encountering things, and he will be the one who gets hurt in the end. However, being beaten up by the sects in other states can also put an end to the boy's arrogance and let him understand what it means to be better than others." The Wangu sect has a relationship with the Xianyu Academy and the Certification Center. The 2 evil sects can't afford to offend them. They always turn themselves into small transparent people, but they must like to see each other make a fool of themselves hiding in the dark. Their happy time is running out. In the small notebook of the Jun Sect Master, the debts owed by the 2 evil sects are still recorded. When he finds time, he will definitely settle the debts with interest. Whoosh, the north wind is howling, and the sky is cold and frozen. In a piece of ice, there is only one inn within 100 miles. At this moment, the warriors are drinking hot wine and discussing recent events. Creak. The door was pushed open, and a man in white walked in under the flying snow, and then sat down by the window. "Sir, are you here to have a meal or stay?" "A meal. What would you like to eat?" "Whatever." The waiter didn't ask any more questions, and soon brought up a few dishes and a pot of wine. The warriors in the inn just took a look, and continued to talk, and they never left the mysterious woman in white in their words. "Brother Heyo?" someone asked puzzledly. "The recent events have been widely spread in Luzhou. What's going on?" The middle-aged man named Brother Heyo said, "If we dig deeper into this matter, the place where the conflict occurred is here. Here." Many warriors were at a loss. Brother Heo took a sip of wine and said, the woman in white first appeared in the inn, and then sat, yes, where this young friend is sitting. She cut off the palm of a martial artist, made enemies with the Snow Valley, and then was hunted down by the other party, and finally involved the extreme cold palace. Snow Valley. The man in white sitting by the window said, where is it? Brother Heo smiled and said, this young friend, you look a little unfamiliar. It seems that you are not from the ice field, right? The man in white turned his head and said, Snow Valley, where is it? The voice and eyes were very cold. When everyone touched them, their scalps went numb and their feet were cold. The smile on Brother Heo's face froze, and he said in a trembling voice, go east along the ice field, about 500 miles away. The man in white retracted his cold gaze, drank a sip of hot wine, threw down a teal of silver, and got up and walked out. Brother Heo. A warrior whispered, this guy is a bit strange. Just his eyes can make me feel scared. This person must be a master. Brother Heo said with a serious face. Awoo. Awoo. Suddenly, there were waves of wolf howls outside. Brother Heo and others hurried to the window and saw a group of martial artists riding wolf beasts galloping towards the east. P.S. Just got home. I will post the next update as soon as it is coded. Chapter 584. First came to Luzhou in northeast China. Prepared generous gifts. 500 miles east of the ice field, there is a valley surrounded by icebergs on 3 sides, with rows of buildings inside. Snow Trace Valley. A 7-stream sect in Luzhou, northeast China. Although this power is not high ranking, it has one biggest feature, that is, it has tamed snow wolves. If you see someone riding a snow white wolf beast on the road, most of them are from Snow Trace Valley. At this moment, many wolves gathered in the martial arts field of this sect, but they are not snow wolves, but more ferocious and more powerful hurricane wolves. They spit out wind vortexes, and their arrogance is very arrogant. Those tamed snow wolves are now like lambs huddled together, trembling with fear. Bang! Bullets flew out and shattered the plaque engraved with Snow Trace Valley on the hall. Jun Changxiao sat on the chair, turning the desert eagle with his fingers, and said lightly, from now on, Snow Trace Valley will be removed from the world. This sentence can be described as domineering. Plop. The leader of the Snow Trace Valley knelt on the ground, his eyes wide open, and he had completely lost his breath. Before he died, he knew that the other party was the leader of the Wangu sect in Yangzhou, southwest China, and he also knew that he came to destroy his sect because he had offended the woman in white. Plop. Several elders of the Snow Trace Valley fell in a pool of blood. From their perspective, they could see the disciples of the Snow Trace Valley falling to the ground in pieces. Li Qingyang, Suzaomo and other disciples held cold swords. The swords were already stained with blood, and there was no expression on their faces, as if they were killers without emotions. Whoosh! The raging flames burned in the valley, adding a bit of enchantment to the snow white world. No one would have thought that on such an ordinary day, the Snow Trace Valley, which had been established for nearly 100 years, would be suddenly wiped out. Sect leader Li Luoqiu walked over quickly and said, I just got the news that Lu Qian. She subconsciously stopped talking. She knew that, if she told the latest information, it would only anger the man even more. Speak. Jun Chang smiled. Li Luoqiu was silent for a while, and said, it is possible that they have been caught by the Extreme Cold Palace. Have you determined the location of the Extreme Cold Palace? Yes. Let's go. Swish. Swish. The members of the Wolf Riders Hall rode on hurricane wolves, and rushed towards the Extreme Cold Palace fully armed. Why is there a fire in the Snow Trace Valley? When Jun Changxiao led his disciples away, the brave warriors walked into the valley one after another. Seeing the bodies burned in the martial arts arena, they all widened their eyes. Oh my god. The Snow Trace Valley was destroyed. For a time, the news spread quickly in Luzhou, northeast China, causing a huge sensation. What? The palace master of the Extreme Cold Palace received the news and frowned, saying, the Snow Trace Valley was destroyed. Who did it? The 4th elder said, it is unknown for the time being. Humph. The 6th elder said coldly, in Luzhou, northeast China, who doesn't know that the Snow Trace Valley is attached to my Extreme Cold Palace? If you dare to destroy it, you are an enemy of my Extreme Cold Palace. The murderer must be found and severely punished. The elders were filled with righteous indignation. At this moment, the master of the extreme cold palace frowned slightly, because when he released his spiritual thoughts, he found a dark shadow approaching in the distant sky. What is that? The elders who reached the level of Martial King also caught it, and their eyes were all surprised. Gradually, the dark shadow was getting closer and closer, and their eyes suddenly widened. Gradually approaching the sect was an extremely large eagle beast, on which stood a man in white, with endless murderous intent between his eyebrows. The one who comes is not friendly. The master of the extreme cold palace made a quick decision and said, activate the sect protection formation. But, in an instant, the extreme cold palace, which was located on the iceberg, had a sky-high stream of light rising, forming the most solid defensive barrier. Warriors within a radius of hundreds of miles saw the formation rising, and their eyes were filled with surprise. It's the Jun Palace's protective formation. Why did it suddenly activate? Is a powerful enemy invading? All the martial artists living in Lhasao in the northeast know that the Jun Palace has a protective formation, but it is never activated on weekdays, because no force can pose a threat to this behemoth. Today's opening is rare. Why is the sky getting dark? Just when many warriors were at a loss, the originally white world became dark. They instinctively looked up, and then stood there dumbfounded. In the sky, an eagle beast as big as a mountain slowly flapped its wings and flew over, then stopped outside the great array of the extreme cold palace, like a king descending. Oh my god. How can there be such a big eagle? Is this the reason why the extreme cold palace opened the great array of the extreme cold palace? Awoo. Awoo. At this time, waves of wolf howls came from behind. Swish. Swish. Everyone hurriedly looked back and saw countless blue streams of light rushing through the ice and snow, and then passing by with strong winds and layers of snowflakes. The martial artists with lower cultivation were immediately blown to the ground by the strong wind. Soon, dense blue streams of light stopped at the foot of the Jun Palace mountain, showing a group of burly wolf beasts. The martial artists riding on them were wearing black armor, which was very powerful. The martial artists in northeast Lhasao were dumbfounded. They instantly realized that this group of people were not good people. Swish. Swish. The high-level officials of the Jun Palace walked out of the hall one after another, looking at the huge eagle beast hanging outside the formation, all frowning. Intuition told them that the eagle beast must be at the level of a spirit beast. My friend. The master of the Jun Palace bowed and said, why did you come to my Jun Palace? To mess up the place. Jun Changxiao said indifferently. The master of the Jun Palace and many elders were immediately angry. Their own sect has been established in northeast Lhasao for 1,000 years, and this is the first time they have encountered someone who dares to mess up the place so directly. Friend. The master of the extreme cold palace said coldly, you and I have no grudges or hatred. Why do you come to mess things up? Jun Changxiao said indifferently, my disciple came to Lhasao in the northeast to practice, and your extreme cold palace is wanted throughout the state. Do you call this no grudges or hatred? Wanted throughout the state? The master of the extreme cold palace suddenly thought of the white-clothed woman with an ice-type physique that he had been looking for recently, and then he suddenly realized, so she has a sect. Humph. An elder said coldly, the girl you mentioned killed the disciples of the Snow Trace Valley and injured my disciples of the extreme cold palace. It is natural that she is wanted. Jun Changxiao touched his nose and said, so, it is natural that the Snow Trace Valley bullied my disciples and was exterminated. It is also natural that I come to visit your extreme cold palace today. Did you destroy the Snow Trace Valley? The master of the extreme cold palace frowned. Jun Changxiao raised his hand and said, my Wangu sect has just come to Lhasao in the northeast, and I have specially prepared a generous gift. I hope your sect will accept it. Swish. At the foot of the mountain, Ziozuji landed in an open area. He immediately took out the field gun with a wave of his hand, and then began to calibrate it, aiming the muzzle at the entrance of the Jun Palace. This gift is huge. Suzaomo, Li Fei and others hurriedly stepped aside and covered their ears in advance. What is that? It looks a bit like a siege weapon. Are they going to bomb the Jun Palace's protective formation? Boom. A deafening roar came, and many warriors' blood and ki rolled, and they couldn't help but spurt blood with a wow, and their eyes were filled with horror. Chapter 585 Senior Sister, here we come. The sound of the cannon was as powerful as ever. The low-level warriors who were a little closer were directly shocked to vomit blood. Those with strong cultivation could suppress the roiling blood, but they heard a buzzing sound in their ears. The Italian cannon was so terrifying. If Li Qingyang came to fire the cannon, it would be more appropriate, because although he was not the 2nd Battalion commander, he was the 2nd disciple of the eternal ancient sect. The remnants of the cannon sound rippled between heaven and earth, and did not dissipate for a long time. The martial artists in Luzhou, northeast China, who were affected, all looked terrified and shocked. Within the field of vision, the long pipes extending from the siege equipment had wisps of green smoke rising, and the ground was shaken into dense spider web-like cracks. Xiao Zuji, who served as the 2nd Battalion commander, covered his ears with his hands, but he was staggering around. It can be seen that he was still a little fainted by the shock, even though he was the closest. He had reached the peak of the martial arts sect, and his body was so strong. How could he not withstand the roar of the field artillery? Because when I came to the extreme cold palace, the sect master gave me several crystal cores containing black spiritual energy. Those were the magic crystal cores obtained in the Demon Ridge Valley. They were not only of high quality, but also carried terrifying magic power. Once the shells were gathered and fired by the magic field artillery, the power exploded to an unimaginable level. This is not it. After the bombardment, the area of the extreme cold palace was filled with a chilling and gloomy atmosphere. It was easy for people to mistakenly think that a certain high-level evil cultivator had performed a powerful evil technique. However, the sect protection formation in the extreme cold palace was distorted when it was bombarded by the magic-modified and magic-powered shells, but it quickly recovered and did not break directly. Sect Master Zendejin, who was accompanying him, transmitted the voice. The sect protection formation of the extreme cold palace has reached the extreme level. This level is very high, comparable to the strength of the martial emperor level. Really? Jun Changxiao raised his hand. Xiao Zuji, who gradually adapted to it, kicked open the shell filling port, took out 2 magic crystal cores, and charged them at the fastest speed. The corners of the mouths of the high-ranking officials of the extreme cold palace twitched. The martial artists in Luzhou, northeast China, who were affected, were so frightened that they hurriedly retreated and subconsciously covered their ears to block their auditory perception. This young friend, the palace master of the extreme cold palace, hurriedly said, "If you have anything to say, please talk." Fire, 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 fire. The remnant of Jun Changxiao's anger echoed in the sky. Bang! The muzzle of the field artillery suddenly erupted with flames, and a black shell seemed to penetrate the endless void and hit the mountain gate of the extreme cold palace directly. Boom! The top-level sect protection formation withstood the second strong bombardment, and was instantly shattered. The power of the shells was not completely offset, and the mountain gate, that had been built for thousands of years, was instantly turned into nothingness under the bombardment of the shells. Hiss! The martial artists in the far distance took a deep breath, because most of the mountain gate of the extreme cold palace was directly blown up. My god. This siege equipment is too scary. The formation master Zendejin was also stunned. The top-grade defensive formation was blown to pieces after 2 bombardments. Even if it was a martial emperor, it would be impossible to do it. The field artillery bought in the mall is powerful, especially when bombarding fixed targets. The power of the spirit core is not comparable to that of the martial emperor level. If 1 shot can't solve it, then 2 shots, 3 shots, countless shots. This time, the Jun clan leader came with endless anger. The mountain gate of the Jun palace must be reduced to ashes under the shells. The dragon has reverse scales, and it will die if you touch it. No matter you are a 4th-rate sect, no matter you have power in Luzhou, northeast China, dare to touch my disciples, no matter the reason, no matter right or wrong, I will make you bloom right on the spot. Puff. The master of the Jun palace spurted out a mouthful of blood. The protective formation has existed in the Jun palace for thousands of years. It was cast by countless ancestors at a great cost of time and resources. Now it is blown to pieces, and my heart is definitely bleeding. In particular, the mountain gate representing dignity was also blown to pieces, which is even more unacceptable. The top leaders of the extreme cold palace were all extremely angry. Puff. The black shadow of the demon ridge flapped its wings and flew over, hovering over the martial arts arena. Jun Chang smiled like a king looking down on all living beings, and said, "Hand over my disciple, otherwise, the extreme cold palace has no value in existence today. This kid is so arrogant." The masters of the certification center and Xianyu Academy who were hiding in the dark and responsible for protecting him secretly twitched their mouths. He rushed over thousands of miles, first destroyed a 7th-rate sect, and now blew up the mountain gate of a 4th-rate sect, and threatened to destroy it. This is definitely not ordinary arrogance. The palace master of the extreme cold palace said with bloodshot eyes, "Boy, you broke my formation, and blew up my mountain gate, so you will leave your life today." As he spoke, the 5th grade martial emperor's cultivation was fully activated, and then he flew up, and the rich spiritual energy burst out like a tsunami. As the leader of a sect, it is impossible for him to hold back at this time. Fight. Must fight. Boom. The master of the extreme cold palace slammed his palm into the void, and the spiritual energy in the sky gathered, and instantly condensed into 4 palm prints, which came down from different directions at the same speed. 4 spirits absolute elephant palm. This is the killer of the master of the extreme cold palace. The warriors in Lhasao, northeast China, exclaimed in amazement, and at the same time, understood that the master of the extreme cold palace had used his trump card as soon as he made a move, and was completely furious at this moment. Li, the black eagle of the demon ridge raised its head and cried loudly, and its wings flapped violently, and the space was immediately rolled up, and then black feathers were seen, bursting away like sharp swords. Boom. 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 In an instant, the light of the sharp feathers came into contact with the palm prints on all sides. There were constant explosions in the sky, and the dazzling light flashed, stirring up the wild wind, ruthlessly disturbing the earth, and shocking many martial artists. Swish, swish, swish. At this moment, Yi Xingchen strode over, and landed on the Jehun Palace martial arts field. The cold sword in his hand had been sacrificed, and his eyes were cold and cold. He said, "A bunch of garbage." Hoo-hoo. An elder of the Jehun Palace flew over, and without saying a word, he gathered vast spiritual energy in fists, and suddenly hit a violent fist print. Yi Xingchen raised his mouth with disdain, and the cold sword in his hand cut through the void, first breaking the opponent's fist print, and then quickly approached, and the one-word quick formula was instantly shaken. Swish, swish, swish. The sword energy intertwined, like shadows and light. Step. Yi Xingchen stood up, and the cold sword gently tilted down, and blood gathered at the tip of the sword. The elder of the extreme cold palace standing behind him tilted his head. Blood splattered on his chest, and he fell to the ground with a bang. Die. Swish. Swish. The 2 elders of the extreme cold palace rushed over from both sides, forming an explosive energy bombardment, but before they attacked, their faces suddenly changed drastically, and they quickly condensed a defensive air wall in front of them. Bang, bang, bang. The bullets bombarded the barrier, and although they failed to shake the 2 martial kings, the impact force generated shook them away. At the ruins of the mountain gate that was blasted open, Xiao Zuji pulled the bolt smoothly, set up the AWM sniper rifle, leaned on the 8-fold scope, and said in a cold voice, "Everyone, don't move." The 2 martial kings who were shaken away were churning with blood and their faces were extremely ugly. What was that guy holding in his hand? Why did it produce such a strong force? Swish, swish. Suzuomo and Li Fei stepped on the vertical cloud step and flew over. The 2 of them landed behind Yi Xingchen, and shouted in a voice that gave people goosebumps, "Senior sister, we are here. If anyone bullies you, we junior brothers will never forgive him." Yes, the people from the Wangu sect are here. At this moment, anyone who bullies Lu Qian, regardless of whether Jun Changxiao agrees or not, her junior brothers and sisters, no one will agree, even if be an enemy of the whole world. The Xinjiang continent, which has been peaceful for too long, needs such an impulsive and passionate force to inject soul and vitality. P.S. After writing this, can't I get a recommendation ticket or a monthly ticket from you? Please. 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 Chapter 586 All disciples obey the order and destroy the Jehun Palace. Senior sister, we are here. If anyone bullies you, we junior brothers will never forgive him. This sentence was shouted out from Suzuomo and Li Fei, disturbing the sky for a long time. Awoo. Awoo. The hurricane wolf flew over. Thousands of wolf cavalrymen, led by Zhang Yi, stood on the Jehun Palace martial arts field like a mighty army. At that moment, there were tens of thousands of Jehun Palace disciples pouring out from the inner courtyard. However, they could not be compared with the disciples of the Eternal Ancient Sect in terms of momentum. Because these people all straightened their spines, and the strong momentum they exuded could only be described as iron bones. Although the sect has changed its name, the purpose of being an iron-boned person and doing iron-bone things will never be erased. Awesome. The masters who were hiding in the dark and responsible for protecting the Jun clan leader were all in admiration when they saw the momentum of the disciples of the Eternal Ancient Sect. This sect has just risen, and it is not at all cowardly in the face of a fourth-rate sect. How was it trained? As a martial artist in southwest Yangzhou, under the influence of the momentum of the disciples of the Eternal Ancient Sect, a strong sense of pride suddenly rose in my heart for no reason. Who said that the strength of our state is poor? Who said that the power of our state can be trampled by anyone? Today, let you see the supernova top 3 sect that rose from the insignificance in southwest Yangzhou. Hoo-hoo, in the sky, the energy gradually dissipated. Jun Changxiao, standing on the Black Eagle of the Demon Ridge, flashed with coldness. The face of the palace master of the extreme cold palace was extremely ugly. Just now, he used his trump card martial arts, but it was easily broken by the eagle beast. The strength is probably not weaker than himself. Nonsense. Without sufficient combat power, how could the Lord Jun come here so rashly? You have Martial King in the extreme cold palace, and I have the Eternal Ancient Sect. You have Martial Emperor in the extreme cold palace, and I have the same in the Eternal Ancient Sect. What's there to be afraid of? Discuss him. Jun Changxiao raised his hand, pointed to the main hall, and said in a cold voice, all disciples, listen to my order, and flatten the Jehun Palace. Yes. All the disciples roared in unison, and the sound shook the 9 heavens. Clang clang clang. Long Xiang and others sacrificed the cold sword, overlord spear, and even the iron shield, and a strong killing intent emerged from their bodies. Li Shangshan and Dush carried sniper rifles, and occupied the highest point. The bullets were loaded, the safety bolts were pulled, and they locked onto the opposite crowd. Brother Snake, I'm not nervous at all now. I just hope you don't hit my fellow disciples again. The disciples of the Eternal Ancient Sect were full of killing intent, and the master of the Jehun Palace said in a deep voice, no one who offends the Jehun Palace will leave alive. The mountain gate was forcibly broken open, and the elders of their own family were killed. Anyone with blood would never compromise. Swish, swish. In an instant, more than a dozen Wuwang elders of the Jehun Palace rushed out of the main hall with strong spiritual energy, and the violent energy shook the space to distortion. Swish. Swish. The Ning brothers flew over, swung their arms, and the hot flame blades condensed instantly, carrying a force of 10,000 kilograms to blast over. Not good. Get out of the way. The elders of the extreme cold palace exclaimed. Unfortunately, they were still a step too slow. The 2 martial kings were hit by the flame slash, with horrifying wounds on their chests, and fell on the stone platform of the hall like a cannonball. The Scarlet Sky Flame Slash purchased from the mall showed terrifying combat power when used by Ning Duxing and Ning Duzu. Step. Yi Xingchen took a step forward, and the floor under his feet sank. His right fist, which was infused with spiritual energy, suddenly blasted out in the void, directly blasting out a martial king who was rushing over. Bang, the elder hit the stone platform directly, his whole body sank into it, his right fist broke directly, and he fainted with a weak breath. Another instant kill. Although Aiyeojiao has just entered the Martial King, his strength is not inferior to that of the 4th or 5th grade Martial King. Bang, bang. At this moment, bullets passed by and hit another elder of the extreme cold palace who was attacking with incredible accuracy, and knocked him away. Ziozuji pulled the bolt, and raised a smile on his lips. TSK. Yi Xingchen said lightly, mind your own business. Although Ziozuji's help was obviously unnecessary, in this situation, the help of his fellow disciples made Yi Di's state of mind change a little. Sometimes, he often thought, that when he returned to the peak, he would seek revenge on his enemies. they would probably accompany him, like they came to save Liu Kai and Qian today, and face danger together. Liao Jiao has really changed. With his previous personality, he would not have such a strange idea. Senior brother. Zhao Hong appeared behind and said, "Get out of the way." While thinking, Yi Xingchen turned sideways and made way for the front. Clang, sword power, Jing Han. Whoosh, in the void, the sword light flashed, and the space seemed to be directly torn apart at that moment, and it exuded a strong sword power. Pachi. The sound of blood splashing came. The elder of the extreme cold palace who came to kill, was directly cut off by the sword energy. Sword King. The eyes of the strong man hiding in the dark were horrified. The disciple named Yi Xingchen was a martial king, which was enough to shock them. Unexpectedly, there was another disciple who was a sword king. After Zhao Hong made a move, it was not only the masters in the dark who were shocked. Those elders of the extreme cold palace who were eager to try all changed their faces. The king of swordsmanship. The most unreasonable existence in the king level. Even if the strength is higher than that, it is not surprising to be killed instantly. The eyes of the master of the extreme cold palace gradually became gloomy. First, he flew directly over on an eagle beast comparable to the martial emperor, and then used siege equipment to blast open the mountain gate. Now the strength of the people he brought is so strong. This is really coming with bad intentions. Kill. Zhang Yi shouted. Awoo. Awoo. Thousands of wolf cavalrymen drove the hurricane wolves, dragging blue light, and rushed forward like a sharp sword. In this battle, they faced tens of thousands of disciples from the fourth-rate sect. Their strength was definitely stronger than that of the White Tiger Corps, but they still carried out crazy killings in an invincible manner. The reason was simple. After a period of training and practice, the strength of the members of the Wolf Cavalry Hall has been greatly sublimated. Boom. Boom. The light brought by martial arts and weapons shone on the martial arts field with thousands of years of history. The disciples of the extreme cold palace fell one after another, just like weeds, being harvested by the wolf cavalrymen. Speaking of which, as a fourth-rate sect, what about the inner disciples of the extreme cold palace, or the direct disciples? Well, they are being beaten by Sima Zongda and Cui Bujian at this moment. Those with stronger strength will be dealt with by Long Xiang, Song Zuantao and others. In short, the top disciples of this fourth-rate sect were completely beaten by the disciples of the Eternal Ancient Sect. The Kali King Guiyang and Zhao Zuji were already fighting with the Martial King level elders, and they didn't care at all. The gap. This is the gap. The master in charge of protection in the dark twitched his mouth. Several main disciples of the Wangu sect, with their peak martial arts cultivation, could actually fight on par with the martial arts elders. This was really scary. Bang, bang, bang. On the commanding heights, Li Shangshan fired frequently. The bullets swept past his fellow disciples' scalps, killing those disciples of the Jahan Palace with relatively strong strength on the spot. The Ning brothers' robes rose without wind, and various martial arts were frequently displayed. They fought with several martial arts elders. Not only did they not lose the upper hand, but also completely suppressed their opponents. The situation was one-sided. Jun Changxiao raised one hand, and the King Lang Yanyu sword appeared out of thin air. He said coldly, "Master of the Jahan Palace, let's fight." Swish, he jumped up, as if he was going to stand shoulder to shoulder with the sun. Whoosh, the mighty and extraordinary martial arts soul emerged in an instant, flashing colorful light. The 7th grade sword martial arts kings fully activated their spiritual energy and sword intent into the Azure Dragon Crescent blade, and slashed 4 times in succession. Kakaka, the violent sword energy tore through the space, and came roaring with the sound of dragon roars. The face of the master of the extreme cold palace suddenly changed. At this moment, he had to take it head on, because if he chose to dodge, the palace behind him, that had stood in the wind and rain for thousands of years, would no longer exist. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 587, The Leader of the Eternal Sect, Jun Changxiao. When the martial emperor of the Iron Sao came to fight, Jun Changxiao stimulated the soul of the martial saint and the 5 element, but he was still unable to win. In the end, he had to use the 10,000 swords return to the sect. To this day, he has been promoted to the 3rd rank, and he once again fully stimulated the Azure Dragon Crescent Blade. When he swung the sword, the power he burst out was completely different from before. Kakaka, the space was directly torn apart by the 5-element sword key, and the flying stream slammed down 3,000 feet. The violent spiritual energy and sword force shook the sky and shocked all living things. The palace master of the extreme cold palace exclaimed in surprise, "Sword and martial kings. Step." Time did not allow him to think. The martial emperor's cultivation was fully opened, and his palms suddenly slammed into the void, shouting, "Hunyuan 9-layer extreme cold realm." Buzz. In an instant, the space above the hall trembled violently. Immediately, a Teikai pattern gathered by ice attributes appeared, forming a barrier similar to a defensive barrier. Zenzang martial arts. The martial artists in the distance exclaimed in unison. The 9-fold extreme cold realm of the primordial universe is a very profound holy ice defense martial art of the extreme cold palace, also known as the martial arts of the sect. Powerful sects all have martial arts that are the bottom of the box. However, the eternal ancient sect does not have it, because apart from the low-level ones in the early stage, the current martial arts such as the 7 mysterious clouds breaking and the scarlet sky flame slash can be used as the martial arts of the sect. But the 9-fold extreme cold realm of the primordial universe is unfolded, materializing the ice-based Teikai pattern, exuding a heavy momentum. The palace master of the extreme cold palace has a livid face. The opponent's 4 swords must be blocked no matter what, because it concerns the safety of the sect's main hall. The mountain gate has been broken, and the dignity has been trampled. If even the sect's main hall cannot be saved, how can we face the ancestors under the 9 springs 100 years later? Boom. 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 The sword energy carrying the supreme power, dragging the force of tearing space, fiercely slammed into the Teikai pattern, and immediately produced a violent tremor. The blood of the palace master of the extreme cold palace was surging violently, but the spiritual energy in his body was still bursting out crazily, and finally stabilized the fluctuating Hunyuan 9-layer extreme cold realm. He resisted it. But it's not over yet. Jun Changxiao, who was going down with the trend, raised the Qinglang Yanyu sword again, with the soul of the martial saint blessing it, and suddenly slashed it down again. Boom. 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 3 more powerful sword auras hit the ice Teikai pattern, bringing a stronger impact. Every knife that Jun Changxiao chopped contained the power of the 5 element, which was really strong to the extreme. Although the palace master of the extreme cold palace had difficulty stabilizing it, the spiritual energy in his body was rapidly consumed. This is a 5th grade martial emperor. In terms of strength, it is 2 grades higher than the martial emperor of the Strongest Sect. Jun Changxiao, who has been upgraded by 3 grades, has really exploded in combat power. If he fights with Jetu Hang again, he will definitely be able to defeat him without using the Wanjiangism. The face of the master of the extreme cold palace became ferocious, and he roared, "Who are you?" The mountain gate was blown open, and many disciples and elders were killed. The identity of the intruder is still unknown. This is really a tragedy. I am. Jun Changxiao raised the Qinglang Yanyu sword again and shouted, "I'm Jun Changxiao, the master of the Wangu sect in Qingyang County, Yangzhou, southwest China." The voice was like a bell, rippling in the world. Wangu sect. Jun Changxiao? The sect that was previously known as the Iron Bone Sect. Boom. 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 At this moment, several sword energies slashed at the ice-type Teikai pattern again, and the latter could not hold on. But with a click, dense cracks appeared. It broke. A few more swords will definitely break it. The master of the extreme cold palace said angrily, "The sect of Yangzhou in the southwest dared to come to my northeast Lhasa. It is really unforgivable." Whoosh. The cold air in the sky suddenly rose, and the falling snowflakes instantly turned into ice cubes, and then quickly gathered together to form 4 lifelike ice dragons. Roar. The sound of dragon roars resounded throughout the world. My god, the palace master of the extreme cold palace has used the martial arts of the sect again, the heavenly illusion ice dragon. Many warriors widened their eyes. Whoosh! It seemed that the 4 ice dragons hovering between heaven and earth dragged their long bodies to attack, and the extreme cold seemed to freeze the air. Cry. The Black Hawk of Demon Ridge raised its head and cried. 2 huge and sharp claws cut through the void, like an eagle catching a chick, directly binding the 2 ice dragons, and then crushing them to pieces with a bang bang. The 5th grade martial emperor is very strong. However, the Lord Jun also has a contracted beast. Don't say that it is unfair for one person and one beast to beat one. If you have the ability, you can also catch one and fight with me. Roar. The other 2 ice dragons rushed over from both sides. They did not attack the Black Hawk of Demon Ridge, but Jun Changxiao. Whoosh! At this moment, a raging flame suddenly erupted in the air, instantly dispelling the extremely cold air, making the entire extreme cold palace warm as spring. Jun Changxiao, who was falling, fell into the flames, and the materialized red armor quickly condensed. This look was so handsome. Whoosh! Xia Longlong's humanoid head emerged from the scorching flames, and he said in a baby voice, "No one can hurt my master. I was wrong just now. It's not 1 man and 1 beast, but 1 man and 2 beasts fighting one." Swish! The light of the flame flashed by. An ice dragon that rushed over was immediately hugged by Xia Longlong's head, saying, "Dry, numb, not round at all." Whoosh! The scorching flames suddenly surged, and the extremely hard body of the ice dragon was instantly wiped out of its edges and sharpness. In the blink of an eye, a lifelike ice dragon was killed by the little dragon, or directly evaporated by the high temperature flame. Water can carry a boat, and it can also cook porridge. When the scorching flame reaches its extreme, even the coldest properties can be melted and evaporated. Swish! Xia Longlong once again hugged the other ice dragon with raging flames, and quickly coiled it to death. Swish! Jun Changxiao slashed down fiercely with the King Long Yanyu sword again, and the already shaky ice barrier could not hold up and finally collapsed into nothingness. Puff! The master of the extreme cold palace spurted blood, and retreated several steps weakly. The 2 martial arts of the sect were broken one after another, causing a great backlash. Without 2 contracted beasts at the level of martial emperors, he could not fight Jun Changxiao. Now, let alone the 2 kings of sword and martial arts, Xia Longlong and Moling Black Eagle would be helpless. Puff, puff. In the sky, the black shadow of Moling flapped its wings, generating a strong wind vortex, blowing the hall violently. Whoosh! Except for the head exposed, Xia Longlong, whose whole body was covered by flames, stopped in midair, and opened his right palm, to catch the falling master. Swish! Jun Changxiao stood with his sword across his body, and said indifferently, "The master of the extreme cold palace is just like this. His surname is Jun. The king who rules the world. Kill. Kill." In the martial arts arena, Zhang Yi led the Wolf Riders Hall to charge recklessly, and thousands of disciples of the extreme cold palace lying on the ground had already died. As for their high-level forces, they were also held back by Yi Xingchen, Zhao Hong, and the Ning brothers. However, at this time, no one noticed that Zendejin, the old man, was strolling leisurely in the outer courtyard of the extreme cold palace, with formation flags planted on the ground. "Master." After a moment, he spread his arms, and a sinister smile appeared on his face, almost twisted, and said, "I want to raise this 4th-rate sect to the ground." Buzz. In an instant, the light in the extreme cold palace shot up into the sky, forming a formation that exuded supreme thunder power. Not good. An elder of the extreme cold palace who had studied formations said in surprise, "This is lightning formation." Wrong. Zendejin shook his finger and said, "This is a newly researched chain lightning formation. Once it is detonated, not only the extreme cold palace, but even the area within 100 miles, will be razed to the ground." What? The faces of the high-level officials of the extreme cold palace changed drastically. Hehe. Zendejin's laughing face became more distorted, as if he was completely perverted. He lowered his voice and said, "Are you afraid? P.S. Today is Monday, and there are already 3099 recommended votes in questions reading. My dears, if the votes can exceed 4,000, I will update." Chapter 588, The Wind is Strong and the Wind is Strong. Zendejin arranged the chain of lightning arrays in the extreme cold palace, eager to detonate them to appreciate his masterpiece. This is a madman. However, there is another madman. That is Jun Changxiao. Just look at him standing proudly on Xia Longlong's palm, his eyes cold, and said, "Hand over this disciple, otherwise, the Extreme Cold Palace will completely disappear from this world." The master of the Extreme Cold Palace was so angry that he almost vomited blood. A sect in the southwest Yangzhou dared to come to the northeast Luzhou to speak nonsense, which is really intolerable. However, under the current circumstances, he had to compromise because the sect might really be razed to the ground. Master Jun, the master of the Extreme Cold Palace, gritted his teeth and said, "My palace has issued a wanted notice for your disciple, but he disappeared after the battle in the Boundless Ice Sea. We are still looking for him." Bullshit. Jun Changxiao said, "I have received the news that my disciple has been captured by you. You are still making excuses. Do you really think I dare not destroy the Extreme Cold Palace?" "Master," Zendejin said coldly, "let me detonate the formation directly." Master Jun wanted to kick him out of the Milky Way. "My precious eldest disciple has not been found yet. If you detonate the formation, wouldn't it be equivalent to harming her as well?" Jun Changxiao was very calm. If it weren't for Lu Kai and Qian, he could have fired a few more shells outside to raise the Extreme Cold Palace to the ground. "Master Jun," the master of the Extreme Cold Palace said with a sullen face, "your noble sect's disciple is really not in my Extreme Cold Palace. The so-called news may be a rumor." How could Jun Changxiao believe it? He said, "It seems that you will not cry until you see the coffin. Kill him for me. Kill. Kill." Puff. Puff. Zhang Yi and others rode on the Hurricane Wolf and continued to kill crazily in the martial arts field. The disciples of the Extreme Cold Palace were not a match at all. We can't let him continue to mess around, otherwise, it will cause public outrage in Luzhou, northeast China. The strong man of Xianyu Academy hiding in the dark was about to show up to stop him. It was too late. Because in the sky, streams of light rushed over, as many as 8, and arrived above the Extreme Cold Palace at the fastest time. The light dissipated, revealing 8 magnificent martial emperor level strongmen. These people are respectively the leader of the 4th-rate Zuanling sect, the leader of the 4th-rate Bingfeng Valley, the leader of the 4th-rate Shanghan sect, the leader of the 4th-rate Bingpo sect. Trouble. The strong man of Xianyu Academy frowned. The masters sent by the certification headquarters were also full of bitterness. Most of the sects in Luzhou, northeast China, were inherited from the lineage of the Ice Emperor 10,000 years ago. Although they usually fight openly and secretly, they will definitely unite against the outside world. Sect leader, Zendejin said solemnly, "The wind is tight. Damn. Where is the abnormal and arrogant look?" As an old man in the arena, Zendejin knows when to pretend and when to keep a low profile. The 8 martial emperors hung above the Jahan Palace, looking at the disciples who were killed in pieces below, and their brows were all frowned. "Boy," the leader of Zuanling sect said coldly, "what hatred or grudge do you have to invade Jahan Palace?" Hoo-hoo, the auras of the 8 martial emperors were fully opened, filling the entire outer courtyard. Although the disciples of Wangu sect could resist, they instinctively stopped and retreated to the ruins of the mountain gate. The current situation is 9 4th-rate sect leaders and 9 martial emperors are confronting Wangu sect. Taking a photo can definitely be rated as the most shocking photography of the year. Facing so many martial emperors, Jun Changxiao was not panicked at all and said, "Bullying my disciples is hatred and resentment. Everyone." The master of Jahan Palace said angrily, "This boy is the leader of Wangu sect in Yangzhou, southwest China, and he is so arrogant that he wants to destroy my Jahan Palace." The 8 sect leaders came to help, which made him secretly relieved. To be honest, if there were no reinforcement, Jahan Palace would be in trouble today. "Oh." The master of Bingfeng Valley sneered, "Is it the sect that was rated as the top 3 in potential and changed its name? I heard that the leader of this sect is also the double king of sword and martial arts. I talked about it before, but I didn't expect to see the master today." The master of Shanghan sect said lightly. Although they looked calm, they were shocked in their hearts. This Wangu sect seemed to have risen overnight, and now it can break the mountain gate of Jahan Palace. Before entering the hall, it is impossible to do it without some strength. "Everyone," Jun Changxiao said lightly, "I'm not a person who holds grudges. Let my eldest disciple go quickly and write off this matter." Hearing this, the corners of the mouth of the master hiding in the dark twitched violently. Jun Sect Master, you broke the mountain gate and killed so many disciples. 8 sect masters came to help in person. It would be a miracle if they could let you leave. Right off, the master of Jahan Palace said with a ferocious face. Jun Changxiao, today you and your disciples must stay in Jahan Palace. Jun Changxiao said with a smile. Does this mean that you won't let my disciples go? Let them go. I don't have any of your disciples in my extreme cold palace. If there were no reinforcement, he might have said it, but now he was full of confidence and sneered. Even if your disciples from the eternal ancient sect are in my extreme cold palace, I won't let them go. You have guts. Jun Changxiao raised his hand and transmitted his voice. Retreat. Cowardly. The 8 martial emperors were staring at us covetously. There was nothing I could do if I didn't want to be cowardly. Damn it. When I find a way to rescue my eldest disciple, I will definitely play with you and make you suffer. Swish. Swish. The disciples of the eternal ancient sect received the order and retreated from the extreme cold palace at lightning speed. The 8 martial emperors, will they watch them retreat? Of course not. Whoosh, in an instant, the might of the 8 martial emperors erupted, instantly forming an overwhelming force, and enveloped the disciples of the eternal ancient sect. Screech. The Black Hawk of Demon Ridge landed at the mountain gate, and swung his arms violently, which immediately rolled up a violent wind and instantly blew away the pressure from the martial emperor. Even so, it was not completely resolved, and there was still a lot of residual pressure. Just when it touched the disciples of the eternal ancient sect, a scorching flame erupted, and instantly cleared it. Xiao Lang Lang and the Black Hawk of Demon Ridge competed with the momentum of the 8 martial emperors, and they were not at all inferior. Strong. Very strong. Jun Changxiao said coldly, if any of my disciples make any mistakes, I will make everyone in the extreme cold palace pay with their blood. Swish. He floated away on Xiao Lang Lang's back. Boy. The leader of the Zuanling sect waved his hand, and the vast power instantly condensed in the sky, and shouted coldly, you can't leave. He is a 7th grade martial emperor, and his strength is very strong. Master. Xiao Lang Lang threw Jun Changxiao out with a flick of his hand, and said with a fighting spirit in his eyes, I'll cover you. Hoo-hoo. The hot flames erupted, and immediately gathered into a vortex similar to a tornado, just like the Lushan Xinglang but directly facing the pressing power of the martial emperor. Boom. Xiao Lang Lang broke the Zuanling sect's sect master's moves with a punch, landed at the mountain gate, and then puffed up his mouth. Hoo-hoo. The flames around him burned wildly and gradually expanded as if adding firewood. Boom. Xiao Lang Lang stepped on the ground with one foot, and his whole body changed from a child to a giant. His voice was extremely deep and said, dry, numb, not round at all. Lee. The black shadow of Moling raised his head and roared, and his huge wings suddenly converged. His whole body was surrounded by black air, and then a light laugh came from the inside. You humans are really annoying for forcing me to use the combat form. Xiao Lang Lang was stunned. Looking down, I saw a black-haired girl with a graceful figure, walking out of the black air barefoot. She was wearing a black feathered dress, and her eyes were as black as stars. Very cute. You are. Xiao Lang Lang said in astonishment, the big bird just now. The girl in black picked her black hair and said proudly, call me queen. Peas. I thought that, whether you give me votes or not, I will definitely update, but I didn't expect that I had just written one, and when I looked at it again, it was really 4,000. You are really strong. There will be more later. Chapter 589 Explosion. Jun Changxiao, who was standing outside the mountain gate, saw the Black Hawk of Demon Ridge transformed into a girl, and his eyes widened immediately. My contracted beast. It turns out that it also has a combat form, and it turns out to be a girl. That little look, that sweet voice, how can it be so cute? I can't take it anymore. My little heart is about to be overwhelmed by cuteness. Especially when I think about how he stood on the eagle beast and acted like a idiot after surrendering. Jun Zhangsu wanted to slap himself in the face with the soul of his shoe. Such a cute girl, riding on her head. This is absolutely a sin. The humanized Black Hawk of Demon Ridge is not very old, with pink and tender skin, like a porcelain doll, really very cute. But Xiao Lang Lang stared with his background eyes and said fiercely, "My queen? Get out of the way, you." Immolling Black Hawk said in disbelief, "You are so fierce to me. What's wrong with being fierce to you?" Xiao Lang Lang said impatiently, "Little baby who has not been weaned, go and feed quickly, don't delay me from showing my power here." Immolling Black Hawk looked at Jun Changxiao, his eyes full of grievances and said, "This little bug bullied me, please help me, master." "Ignore him," Jun Changxiao said, "a guy who is destined to be lonely for the rest of his life." System. These words seemed to bloom. Whoosh. At this moment, the leader of Zuanling sect and another martial emperor flew over, and a vast spiritual energy burst out, squeezing the space crazily. "Get out of the way." Xiao Lang Lang pushed Immolling Black Hawk away, raised his arms covered with hot flames, and slammed them into the void. Boom. The space shook, and the hot power spread. The power of the two martial emperors was directly broken, and they also took 2 steps back, their eyes full of shock. This big guy filled with flames, his strength is so strong. Ice seal of heaven and earth. The leader of Strongest Sect flew over, and the extremely cold breath spread, and the space was frozen, as if it turned into a materialized mirror. These martial emperors in Northeast Lhasa are all genuine ice cultivators, and they are very good at using ice martial arts. What a pity. No matter how strong the ice is, it will melt when it encounters a hotter fire. Xiao Lang Lang is now fire in winter, and the blazing flames warm everyone's hearts. "Ah!" he shouted, his arms suddenly spread out, and the hot flames burned wildly, causing the surrounding temperature to drop sharply and instantly pull back. The frozen space felt the warmth being unsealed from the seal, but because of the cold and heat, it suddenly shattered like a mirror. My god. The martial artists in Northeast Lhasa in the distance were stunned. The power that can stir the void with a wave of their hands and feet. How lucky they have been to witness it. This is a fight between gods. At this moment, another sect leader crossed his hands, and the ice energy gathered in his palms. He shouted angrily, "Ice soul cold light. Kakaka." The cold air whistled out and quickly gathered into a huge ice cone, carrying infinite power to pierce. Xiao Lang Lang, who had just broken a sect leader's martial arts, could hardly distract himself to fight back at the first time, and could only watch the ice martial arts kill him. Whoosh. At this moment, a vortex of wind rolled up behind him, and then blew over, instantly cutting the ice cone into pieces. Swish. The Black Eagle of Demon Ridge pointed his toes, spread his wings, and flew into the air. His white little hand drew a special pattern in the air, and he said, "Little bug, get rid of these people, and then I will settle the score with you." Hey. The little girl clapped her hands on the seemingly real and illusory pattern, and pieces of black feathers appeared out of thin air, exuding powerful power. "Xian Nusan." After a pause, he said, "Feathers." Xiao Lang Lang almost fell down. The goddess scatters feathers. What the hell is that? Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sky was full of black feathers, like bullets, and instantly blasted towards the outer courtyard of the extreme cold palace. The coverage was so wide that the faces of the 8 martial emperors changed drastically. The palace master of the extreme cold palace said in surprise, "Hurry up and protect my palace." Swish, swish. As soon as the voice fell, several martial emperors flew over, and the cold air instantly spread out, forming a substantial ice wall defense in front of them. Boom 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 boom. The black feathers blasted against the ice wall, and the explosion and residual power produced from far outside could be seen ripples spreading wildly, and the whole world trembled with it. So strong. Jun Changxiao, who had already evacuated the extreme cold palace, looked delighted. Ha ha ha. My contracted beast is not only cute, but also very good at fighting. Hoo hoo. Xiao Lang Lang didn't want to be outdone by a little girl, so he dragged his huge body and blasted over with flames that seemed to steam the world. For a moment, above the extreme cold palace, violent energy exploded crazily, and the space was disturbed, cracked, and twisted, as if the world was about to end. Hey. Zendejin put his hands behind his back and said, "Why doesn't the sect master agree that I blow up the extreme cold palace?" At this moment, the chain of lightning array set up on the martial arts field was in turmoil due to the extreme distortion of space. If it was not detonated, there would be no chance. "Let's go." Jun Changxiao ordered all the disciples to evacuate. He didn't expect 8 martial emperors to come to help. Since he couldn't do it, he must retreat tactically and think of a countermeasure to save Liu Kai and Qian. Sect Master. At this moment, Suzuomo exclaimed in surprise, "Look, it's the eldest sister. There. Jun Changxiao hurriedly looked in the direction of the finger and saw Liu Kai and Qian, dressed like a fairy in white, standing on a lonely peak in front of her, with complex emotions in her bright eyes. She didn't expect that the sect master and his fellow disciples would come to Luzhou in the northeast for her and fight with the extreme cold palace. At that moment, the state of mind that had been as calm as water was cracked again. Alas, it will be difficult to repair it. Elder sister, the disciples shouted excitedly. Seeing that the eldest disciple appeared safe and sound, Jun Changxiao breathed a sigh of relief and murmured, "She has lost weight." Wait, wasn't she captured by the extreme cold palace? How could she appear here? Li Luoqiu transmitted the message. Sect Master, I just got the news that the previous information received was wrong. The extreme cold palace did not find Liu Kai and Qian. Jun Changxiao's mouth twitched. Sister, can the information be more accurate? It's not Li Luoqiu's fault that his intelligence was wrong, but the information network had not been fully deployed, so it was inevitable that there would be oversights in the screening. Boom. There was a loud explosion behind him. Xiao Langlong was bombarded by 4 martial emperors, and his huge body fell from the mountain gate to the foot of the mountain. He grinned and said, "It hurts." Boom. Boom. Above the extreme cold palace, the other 4 martial emperors were fighting the petite demon Ridge Black Hawk, but because they were outnumbered, they were gradually falling into a passive position. Sect Master, Zendegen asked again, "Bomb or not?" The veins on Jun Changxiao's neck were sunken, and he shouted angrily, "Bomb." Okay. Zendegen covered his face with one hand and laughed like a madman. Swish. Suddenly, he spread his arms and said with a ferocious face, "Next, please enjoy a magnificent fireworks feast." Buzz. Buzz. The space of the extreme cold palace suddenly vibrated regularly. The array barrier that was originally hidden in the dark appeared again and produced a hot and dazzling luster. As a spiritual beast, the Black Hawk of Moling is better at perceiving danger than humans. It gathered the wind vortex to repel a martial emperor and hurriedly flapped its wings, flew out like the wind, grabbed Xiao Langlong's big ear with one hand, and rushed towards the position of its master. Not good. The 8 martial emperors smelled the danger. But it was too late. After the formation flashed with brilliance, it suddenly turned into a little cold light and then exploded with a boom and boom. The mountain that carried the extreme cold palace directly blossomed in everyone's sight. P.S. The recommendation votes are about to reach 5,000. The total recommendation votes counted by the Chuangxi Chinese website are ranked 6th, and the distance to 5th is also fast. After writing books for so many years, I never thought that I would have such a strong day on the recommendation list. Thank you to all the readers who voted for the recommendation. I love you. I love you Xingchen. Chapter 590. I'm at Tegu Mountain, waiting for you to come and collect your debt. Boom. Boom. The sound of explosions was endless, and it could be heard clearly within 1,000 miles. The whole earth was shaking, and all the warriors in it looked towards the direction of the extreme cold palace with horror. What happened? The martial artists in Luzhou, northeast China were collectively dumbfounded. This level of vibration must have been caused by a huge explosion. Hiss, hiss hiss hiss, extreme cold palace. No, on the half-blown mountain, the restless lightning splashed, showing that the residual power has not completely dissipated. Jun Changxiao's eyes were filled with disbelief. Liu Kai and Qian appeared on the mountain peak, and people were not in the extreme cold palace. Xiao Langlong was knocked out again. He directly adopted Zendegen's suggestion, and chose to detonate the formation. But, this kind of power, this kind of destructive power is too scary, even field artillery can't do it. Li Qingyang, Xiao Zuji and others were also dumbfounded, especially thinking of the chain explosions that were more brilliant than fireworks just now. A chill suddenly rose behind him. Ah. Zendegen shook his head and said, the power is not as expected. We need to improve it after we go back. Everyone's mouth twitched. The whole mountain was blown up, but it still hasn't reached the expected level. If you want to improve it, I'm afraid it will flatten the area within a radius of 100 miles. Wait. Jun Chang laughed and said, Old Zen, didn't you just say that once the formation is detonated, it can flatten the area within a radius of 100 miles? Yes. Everyone remembered it too. He said so, and he asked the people of the extreme cold palace in a very gloomy way if they were afraid. Zendejin put his hands behind his back, letting the cold wind blow on his face, and said shamelessly, when facing a strong enemy, if you can say it as big as possible, just say it as big as you can, so that you can scare them. Damn. After all this time, you are just bragging. Everyone rolled their eyes. However, it is still very tough to blow up half of the extreme cold palace with the formation alone. Li Qingyang and others finally realized why no one in the Xinjiang continent was willing to offend the formation master. Too scary. Too scary. Especially a lunatic like Zhen Liao. Whoever messes with him, he will squat at the doorstep all day long to set time bombs. Just thinking about it makes my spine cold. Zhen Liao. Suzaomo came over and said with a shaking smile, can you teach me? If anyone messes with me in the future, I will set up a formation in his toilet and blow up his shit and urine. Zendejin rolled his eyes at him and said, you don't have the qualifications for formations. Go play in the mud. Puff. Puff. The black shadow of the demon ridge flapped its wings and flew over, casually throwing down the mountain-sized Xiaolonglong, saying, Master, this little bug was almost blown to death. Bullshit. Xiaolonglong stood up angrily and said, if you don't pull me, I can still dodge. TSK. The black eagle of the demon ridge snorted coldly, landed in front of Jun Changxiao, and smiled sweetly. Master, my performance just now was okay, right? Not bad, not bad. Jun Changxiao gave him a head pat to kill. The demon ridge black hawk girl, only 11 or 12 years old, stood with the 1.80 meter tall Jun Zhangzu, and they looked like father and daughter. Of course. The most eye-catching thing was the pair of wings as black as ink. So beautiful. Suzaomo came over and smiled. Girl, can I touch it? Swish. The demon ridge black hawk turned around, retracted the smile on his face, and flashed a cold look in his bright eyes, saying, remember, call me queen. The speed of changing his face was too fast. Suzaomo shuddered and hurriedly said, okay, sir. Hoo-hoo. At this moment, a stream of violent energy emerged from the half-blown mountain, and the 8 sect masters flew out of the thunder in an extremely embarrassed manner. The explosion came too suddenly, and they didn't dodge at all. Fortunately, they were very strong, and could withstand the bombardment of thunder, but they were inevitably beaten to a pulp. The most miserable person was the master of the extreme cold palace. He was suspended in midair, with his back to Jun Changxiao and the others, his arms spread out in the shape of a big character. His whole body was burnt black, even his hair stood up, and black smoke was coming out. Directly in front of him. Although the hall, that had stood for thousands of years had many cracks, it still existed in the ruins, and most of the inner courtyard of the sect survived under his protection. At the moment of the explosion, the master of the extreme cold palace did not think about protecting himself, but used his body to protect the sect hall that represented inheritance and soul. Because, in his opinion, people can die, but the dignity of the sect must be defended. Plop, plop. The high-level officials of the extreme cold palace fell one by one in the ruins. Although they did not fly up and defend the dignity of the sect with their bodies, they also stood in front of the hall to form a human wall, protecting the lifeline of the sect and protecting more disciples. Admiration. Jun Changxiao bowed. He did not regret making the decision to blow up the extreme cold palace, nor would he feel pity. But in a critical moment, defending the dignity of the sect with flesh and blood, regardless of life and death, this alone is worthy of respect. Jun Changxiao, the palace master of the extreme cold palace, fell weakly in front of the palace under his protection. His eyes red as he said, I will pay you back 100-fold for the humiliation you have brought upon my extreme cold palace today. Jun Changxiao turned around and said arrogantly, I'm in Tegu Mountain, waiting for you to come and collect the debt. Boy. The leader of Zuanling sect said angrily, do you think you can leave? Huh. As soon as the voice fell, Xiaolonglong slammed his palms into the void, and 2 explosive fire pillars rushed over, shocking him and hurriedly retreated. Swish, swish. Swish. The other 7 martial emperors flew over quickly and blocked the way of Jun Changxiao and others. They came to Luzhou in the northeast to make trouble and almost blow up the Jahan Palace into ruins. If the Wangu sect was allowed to leave safely, where would their face and dignity be? Everyone. Jun Changxiao said indifferently, I found my eldest disciple, and it should be a time to ask about his well-being. You are flying around like flies, which is really annoying. Master. Xiao Lang said, you go first, I will cover you. No need. Jun Changxiao raised his hand, and the pocket-sized hard-to-collect knife appeared out of thin air in his palm. He said coldly, I have never killed a martial emperor. I don't mind killing 8 people today. This knife. Li Qingyang and others changed their faces. In the Death Valley, in the Spirit Stone vein full of snakes and beasts, they all witnessed it. It is definitely a terrifying magic weapon. The sect master took it out again today. Is he going to use the blood of the martial emperor to sacrifice the knife? Humph. The sect master of Zuanling sect said coldly, killing 8 of us. Sect master Jun is really not afraid of the wind flicking his tongue. Whoosh. The other 7 martial emperors released their cultivation together, and the strong pressure pressed down like a tidal wave. Jun Changxiao put 2 fingers on the handle of the sword that was difficult to put away, and the seal in the space ring was already pinched. However, when he was about to crush it, and was about to sacrifice the 40-meter long sword, Lu Qian flew over and landed in front of Jun Changxiao. She subconsciously protected him behind her, raised her jade hand, showed something and said, the Ice Emperor's order is here. Who dares to act rashly? It was a token with a gold border, engraved with the 4 words Ice Emperor's order. You. The leader of the Zuanling sect said in surprise, how can you have the Ice Emperor's token? The other 7 sect leaders also changed their faces, but they also hurriedly withdrew their pressure, obviously not daring to act rashly in front of the Ice Emperor's token. The mantle of the senior Ice Emperor. Lu Qian said calmly, I inherited it. What? How is it possible? The 8 sect leaders looked at each other with disbelief. The Ice Emperor disappeared thousands of years ago, and his life or death is still unknown. Suddenly, someone took out the token and said that he would inherit his mantle. This is simply incredible. P.S. The 6th update. Thanks to the readers who gave me tips in the past 2 days, and thanks to the readers on Kidian for their tips. The recommendation votes have ranked 3rd in the overall list. Tomorrow. See how I'm doing. If I write well, I will continue. The goal is to keep the top 5 this week. Please help me. Bo. Recommendation votes are given out every day, but getting the first place has no real meaning, because I don't earn a penny. In the past, I just prayed for it. This week I want to roll up my sleeves and do a big job. I want to know how much potential the Strongest Sect can have with your help. 10,000 years is too long. I will only fight for this week. If I can write with the passion of asking for recommendation votes as I do for asking for monthly tickets, I'm really nice. Chapter 591, Getaway. Lu Qian took out the token, and the 8 sect leaders hurriedly retracted the aura of oppression they released. This made Jun Changxiao, who was about to crush the seal and prepare to install a bigger one, look surprised. Li Xingqian's heart was also in turmoil. In terms of seniority, Bing Di was one of the top masters of the older generation of Xinjiang continent. After he became the martial emperor, he had been in seclusion for a long time and had never had the honor of seeing his face. Unexpectedly, Lu Qian would be able to inherit his mantle today. This is definitely a great opportunity that can't be sought. Girl. The leader of Zuanling sect said, are you true? Are you questioning the order of Bing Di? Lu Qian's voice was as cold as ever, without any emotion. The disciples of Wangu sect felt comfortable listening to it. It's still the same formula, the same taste. Our senior sister hasn't changed at all. No, she has changed. The cold air exuded by the senior sister is stronger than before, and her temperament is getting colder and colder, and she is more and more like a fairy who doesn't eat fireworks from the world. Fear appeared in the eyes of the giant little dragon, and even the rising flames suddenly weakened a lot. This was the huge psychological shadow caused by being frozen. Lu Qian said, you can question what I said, but can you question the Ice Emperor's order? No. The token exuded an unparalleled cold power. The 8 martial emperors were sure that this was definitely a token of the Ice Emperor, not a replica that could be made with 1 or 2 taels of silver. Liu Kai and Qian said, "You should all be branches of the sect founded by senior Ice Emperor. Now I'm his successor, why don't you worship?" The faces of the 8 martial emperors changed suddenly. They looked at each other, and even though they were extremely reluctant, they could only bow and say, "Excuse me. Speak louder." Jun Chang smiled and said, "I didn't hear it clearly." Seeing that this group of sect masters were very afraid of the disciples' tokens, he began to show off. As for the difficult to collect knife, it was also collected early because there was no need to use it at all, and it saved a sealed talisman. Seeing the arrogant and domineering look of Jun Changxiao, the 8 martial emperors almost rolled up their sleeves, surrounded him and beat him up, but the Ice Emperor's order stood in front of them, like a mountain pressing down on them. The Ice Emperor 10,000 years ago was absolutely the supreme authority, and no one dared to disobey him. Especially these forces in northeast Lhasa. Their predecessors were separated from the sects created by the Ice Emperor, and they always respected him as their ancestors to worship. Therefore, they could only bow their hands and say again, "Excuse me." The voice was loud and full of confidence. Jun Chang smiled and said with satisfaction, "That's more or less." He looked like he deserved a beating. If it weren't for the screen, the author would have wanted to plate him. Liu Kai and Qian said lightly, "Are you still not leaving?" The faces of the 8 martial emperors suddenly looked ugly. The guy who came to Northeast Lhasa to mess up the scene has not paid a painful price, and it is really unwilling to leave like this. "You don't leave." Jun Chang smiled and said, "Let's go." The eldest disciple was found, and the extreme cold palace was also cleaned up. He had no worries, and took his disciples away peacefully. "Leaving now? Nonsense. That woman has the Ice Emperor's order." Seeing the order is like seeing the person. The 8 sect masters will definitely not dare to act rashly. This Wangu sect is really awesome. The disciple is actually the successor of senior Ice Emperor. The martial artists in Lhasa, northeast China, who were standing far away, all started to discuss, and at the same time, they also realized that the extreme cold palace had completely fallen today. The masters of the 2 major organizations hiding in the dark were a little confused. They had planned to help Sect Master Jun when he was in danger, but they didn't have a chance to appear at all. This is good. If the 2 major organizations appeared, even if Jun Changxiao was saved, the matter would instantly escalate from the sect feud to the feud between the 2 states, which would only make the problem more serious. A conflict ended with Liu Kai and Qian showing the Ice Emperor's order, and Sect Master Jun and his disciples also escaped unscathed. Speaking of escaping unscathed, it reminds me. Forget it, just bloom where you are. Ding. Congratulations to the host for completing the hidden task, Invincible, and obtaining 2000 contribution points. Ding. Congratulations to the host for completing the hidden task, Escape, and obtaining 3000 contribution points. Ding. Contribution value 20,000/20,000 point. Ding. Congratulations to the host for completing the hidden task, Invincible, and obtaining hidden rewards, Experience Talisman X1, Top Grade Qualification Transformation Fluid X5. Ding. Congratulations to the host for completing the hidden task, Escape, and obtaining hidden rewards, Experience Talisman X1, Top Grade Sword Qualification Fluid X1. Invincible means killing to the extreme cold palace, and using absolute strength to abuse the opponent without any ability to fight back. Escape means that, even if there are 8 martial emperors besieging, you can still escape safely without any loss. Awesome. The lord of the Jun clan shouted loudly, while walking in the ice and snow. The most exciting thing is the 2 experience charms and the top grade sword aptitude transformation liquid as rewards. According to previous experience, after using them, you can definitely break through the 9th grade sword and martial arts double kings. After practicing for a while, and reaching the peak, you can trigger the epic task. Entering the Emperor of Martial Arts is just around the corner. Especially the top grade sword aptitude liquid. After taking it, the Emperor of Swordsmanship is at your fingertips. Under an ice hill with a cold wind, the disciples of the Eternal Ancient Sect stopped to rest temporarily. After experiencing a fight in the extreme cold palace, although it was exciting, some wolf cavalrymen were inevitably injured. Fortunately, there was a spiritual armor to protect the body, and the flesh was extremely strong, so it was nothing more than a minor injury. Brothers. Li Shangshan squatted in front of the ice stone, holding his head, shivering and said, "Be gentle." Suzaomo, Li Fei and others surrounded him, clenching their fists, and their eyes were filled with a creepy red glow. In the extreme cold palace, they not only had to distract themselves to fight the enemy, but also to guard against the bullets that could be fired from behind at any time. Suzaomo smiled grimly. "I was shot 4 times, so I'll throw 4 punches." "Damn, I was shot 6 times. Li Fei said madly. Shanqi gritted his teeth and said, "Although I was only shot twice, they all hit my buttocks, without even turning. If I hadn't protected myself in advance, the consequences would be disastrous. What are you waiting for?" Suzaomo took a step forward, grabbed Li Shangshan's body, and shouted, "Brothers, take care of him." Bang, bang, bang. In a moment, Li Shangshan was abused with a big bump on his head, his eyes narrowed into a line, and he looked as miserable as he could be. "Damn it. I will never play with a gun again." On the ice hill, Lu Kai and Qian withdrew her gaze from a group of playful junior brothers and said, "I'm sorry to have made the master worried. It was unexpected to say these words. It's good that he's okay." Jun Changxiao said with a smile, "But remember, our sect has been upgraded to a clan, and you have to call me the clan leader from now on." "Understood, clan leader." Lu Kai and Qian said. Jun Changxiao asked curiously, "How did you inherit the Ice Emperor's legacy?" Lu Kai and Qian said, "I fought with a strong man from the extreme cold palace in the boundless ice sea, but I was defeated and fled with injuries and accidentally broke into the place where the Ice Emperor lived in seclusion before his death." "Fleeing with injuries?" Jun Changxiao said with a cold look. "He is lucky that he injured my sect's eldest disciple and did not directly destroy the extreme cold palace." Looking at the angry back in front of her, Lu Kai and Qian felt warm in her heart, and her state of mind, which had been broken just now, cracked again. The calm state of mind that had been stabilized recently was completely destroyed. P.S. Please vote. Chapter 592. The wine on the ice field is strong. Actually, the extreme cold palace was also quite unlucky. At the beginning, they thought that Lu Kai and Qian had a special ice physique and wanted to recruit her. However, the conflict between the other party and the Snow Trace Valley became more and more serious, so that they gradually deviated from their original intention and finally developed into a wanted order and met and fought in the boundless ice sea. If the extreme cold palace had adhered to the principle at the beginning and just recruited, there would not have been a long distance attack from the eternal ancient sect, and it would not have ended up like this. It's a wake-up call. A wake-up call to tell the whole continent that my eternal ancient sect should not be easily provoked. Of course, the news that the Jun sect master almost destroyed the extreme cold palace and then alarmed the 8 sect masters will spread like a strong wind throughout the continent, and it is bound to set off a new round of heated discussions. Then what? Jun Changxiao continued to ask. Lu Kai and Qian said, "I got his token from Senior Bingdi in his seclusion, walked out of the boundless ice sea, and heard that the Snow Trace Valley was destroyed. From the news that a large number of wolf-riding warriors had come to the Snow Trace Valley, she guessed that it was a sect master and his fellow disciples who did it, so she went to the extreme cold palace." Lu Kai and Qian knew Jun Changxiao. He must have learned about her being wanted and then brought people to seek justice for her. Everything was as she guessed. When she arrived at the extreme cold palace, the sect master and his fellow disciples had already started fighting with each other. At that moment, Lu Kai and Qian's state of mind was hit by the unprecedented impact, and her originally calm state of mind was broken. She came to Luzhou in the northeast to stabilize her state of mind and break through to a higher level, but she failed at the last minute. It was really fate. "Do you want to continue to train here?" Jun Changxiao said. Lu Kai and Qian looked at him and said, "Can I?" There was a hint of pleading in those cold and inhuman words. "It has changed. Although it still gives people a very cold feeling, at least it is mixed with human touch." Jun Changxiao said, "If being here can help you break through faster, it's not impossible to stay and train." "Thank you, Sect Master," Lu Kai and Qian said. "But," Jun Changxiao said seriously, if you encounter danger, you must contact the sect immediately. I will never allow anyone to hurt you, even if you touch a hair. The tone of the last sentence was much heavier. Crack. The invisible sound of breaking was remembered in Lu Qianqian's heart. Her eyes shook slightly, and then she turned around subconsciously and whispered, disciple knows. Of course. Jun Changxiao looked up and said sharply, any disciple, I will not allow others to bully others. The flying snow fell from the sky and evaporated instantly under his strong momentum. Lu Qianqian did not plan to follow the sect master back to the Eternal Sect. After all, she had just obtained the inheritance of the Ice Emperor and needed to practice in this icy land to break through faster. Sect Master Jun allowed it. As long as the disciple is fine, it is okay to train in Latao, northeast China. Of course. Jun Changxiao can't just leave. Since he came here, he must take his disciples to have a good time and experience different customs and customs. What's more, this land of ice and snow is full of scenery. In the Ice Valley, Zendejin took a sip of the strong liquor produced in Latao, northeast China, and said, the liquor on the ice field is still strong enough. Suzaomo came over with a bowl of wine and said with a shaking smile, Zen Leo, teach me the formation. Get lost. Zendejin said, go play somewhere else. Hula. In front of the big pot built on the spot, Jun Changxiao threw the mincemeat he had just chopped into it, waved a big spoon, and said, I'll make you a specialty dish today. Liu Wanshi didn't come, and Li Qingyang was too weak, so the cooking work fell on him. Previously, he led his disciples to kill in the extreme cold palace. Now he is wearing an apron and cooking in the snow. This is Jun Changxiao, a ruthless devil, a funny guy who can go to the kitchen. Master, Li Shangshan said, your skills are far inferior to Dudu's. Bang, the whole face sunken, and then slammed into the iceberg in the shape of a Tay. The girl-like Black Hawk of Moling retracted her little hand, and the ripples in the space dissipated. She said with a cold face, anyone who questions the master must accept the punishment of my little magic fairy. Yes. Her name is Little Magic Fairy. Jun Changxiao just gave it a name, and it also has a fashionable prefix, named Balala, girl. While cooking, Sect Master Jun said seriously, you are a girl, you must be subtle when speaking. If you want to hit someone, you can say, let me do it to you. Do it to you? The little fairy was puzzled. What do you mean? Just let me take care of you. Jun Changxiao said, I understand. The little fairy stood up, walked barefoot to the iceberg, pointed at Li Shangshan with a crooked mouth and squinting eyes, and said proudly, let me do it to you. Boom. 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 Feathers flew all over the sky, and they bombarded wildly. Suzaomo and others turned their heads away, thinking, the sect master's contracted beast that can transform into a human form is more terrifying than Xiaolanglang. That's right. Where is Xiaolanglang? Everyone hurriedly looked for him, and saw that the guy had returned to his original appearance, sitting proudly on a small iceberg, with the momentum of I want to be defeated, but I'm invincible in the world. In fact, she was panicking. Because Lu Qianqian was here, she had to keep her distance. The master's cooking is good. The food was out of the pot, and the disciples gathered around and praised it. So, in the Snow Valley, thousands of disciples gathered together to eat a big pot of rice, and the scene was very beautiful. Qianqian. Jun Chang smiled and said, your junior brother came all the way to Lasao in the northeast to fight with others for you. As a senior sister, don't you express your opinion? The senior sister is in trouble. We come to help. This is also what we should do. Suzaomo grinned. Li Fei smiled and said, we are all from the same sect, as close as brothers and sisters. When we encounter danger, who can we rely on if our fellow disciples don't help us? That's right. Jun Chang smiled and said, as disciples of the Eternal Ancient Sect, we should be as close as brothers and sisters, sharing happiness and suffering together. Lu Qianqian walked to the stone platform, knocked off the mud seal of the wine jar, poured a bowl of wine, raised it lightly, and swept her cold eyes over the fellow disciples present. She didn't say anything. Li Qingyang, Xiao Zuji and others understood what the senior sister meant, so they all raised their glasses. Lu Qianqian drank the hot liquor in one gulp. Swish, swish, Li Qingyang and others acted in unison and drank the liquor clean. They did not communicate with each other in words. Everything was in their hearts, in the hot liquor. In the world of flying snow, a beautiful melody sounded and sang slowly. The sea laughs. The tides on both sides are surging. Ups and downs follow the waves. Only remember today, the sky laughs. The tides of the world are surging. Who will lose and who will win? God knows. Senior sister. On the iceberg, Li Qingyang and others rode on the hurricane wolf, looked back and said, "We will go back first." A woo. The wolf's howl resounded through the sky, and blue streams of light rushed from the ice field like a tide. Cry. The black eagle of Demon Ridge flapped its wings and cut through the sky. Jun Changxiao sat cross-legged on its back and crushed 2 talismans of experience. The power of the 9 rank sword kings burst out, and he said with the energy in his danshan, "Whoever offends my Wangu sect will be punished, no matter how far away he is." The voice contained extremely strong penetrating power, echoing in the sky of Lasao in the northeast, and even martial artists 5 or 6,000 miles away could hear it clearly. Chapter 593. If you want to play, play big. What? The chief helmsman of the demonic sect stood up suddenly and said in disbelief, "Wangu Zhang almost destroyed Jihan Gong?" "Yes, chief helmsman," said his subordinate. The chief helmsman sat down directly, his face full of disbelief. According to the information he learned, Jun Changxiao only brought about 1,000 disciples. With this little power, he could almost destroy a 4th-rate sect with tens of thousands of people. Moreover, that was someone else's territory. Everyone knows that martial artists who practice ice are extremely powerful in the ice and snow environment. It is simply a fantasy to rely on thousands of people to almost destroy it. Jun Changxiao and his disciples did the impossible. At this moment, the news about the Battle of Jiangong swept across the entire Xinjiang continent like a storm. After many forces learned about it, they all widened their eyes. In particular, they learned that before Jun Changxiao left, he shouted in the sky, "Those who offended my Wanguzan will be punished, even if they are far away." Warning. Naked warning. How arrogant it is to go to someone else's territory and shout such words. Wanguzan. On a misty mountain, an old man with a Taoist temperament stroked his beard and said, "It's interesting." Sect master. A middle-aged man said respectfully, "Recently, this sect in Yangzhou, southwest China, has done many unexpected things and has been in the limelight." The old man smiled and said, "Every sect with potential will cause ripples like a stone falling into the water, but there are very few that can truly gain a foothold in the world, so there is no need to care. What's more," he paused, waved his hand, and chess pieces appeared out of thin air between his skinny fingers. He gently placed them on the chessboard and said, "The current Xinjiang continent is like a stagnant pool of water. It needs this kind of vigorous force to shake the world pattern." The middle-aged man's face changed slightly and said, "Sect master, do you think highly of the Wanguzan? Whether it is optimistic or not is not important." The old man murmured, "It depends on its own luck." In the past, the first question that the prefecture and county warriors asked when they met was, "Have you eaten?" Now, "Have you heard about it?" If someone asks, "What have you heard about?" they will definitely be despised and regarded as aliens. The big thing that the Wangu sect caused spread all over the Xinjiang continent. Almost everyone was discussing it and spreading it. It really has a trend of who in the world doesn't know you. Some people think it is arrogant. Some people think that a newborn calf is not afraid of a tiger. In short, for the Wangu sect, just like the author writing a book, it is impossible to get absolute praise, and it is inevitable that warriors from various states will secretly criticize it. I can accept honor. I will also accept all slander and abuse. However, with Jun Changxiao's personality, he will never accept slander and abuse. Otherwise he will pick up weapons and fight in minutes. The Wangu sect does not have a good reputation in various states. In the southwest Yangzhou, it is regarded as an idol and hero by countless martial artists. Throughout the ages, how many foreign sects have entered their own territory to provoke trouble? Now they have gone out of the state gate and slaughtered the 4th-rate forces of others. This is absolutely gratifying. For a while, the reputation of the Wangu sect reached its peak in Yangzhou, southwest China, and became the most desirable martial arts holy land for young boys and girls. Dad, Mom. My child is determined to become a disciple of the Wangu sect in the future. 2 years ago, such words would be firmly opposed by parents. Now, not only are they pleased that their children have finally grown up, but they will also encourage them to stick to their dreams. When a sect has enough prestige, it will impact the surrounding life and even culture. The 8 cities of Qingyang County are swept by the style of the Wangu sect. First of all, reforms were made in clothing. Strict and solid dress was abandoned and gradually changed to simple and vibrant new clothing like the Wangu sect school uniform. This change in clothing is especially popular among the upper class. When visiting relatives and friends, or holding grand banquets, men wear short shirts to show simplicity, and women mostly wear short skirts to show their good figures. Ziguan Can also made drastic reforms in clothing, choosing to go into battle lightly, and he was more energetic than before. Under the impact of the city lord in the upper class, the new clothing trend began to penetrate ordinary people. The traditional costumes of the Xinjiang continent give people a dull feeling. Inspired by the school uniforms of the Eternal Sect, they gradually turned into colorful ones, with 100 flowers competing for beauty. So much so that walking on the main street of Qingyang City and looking at pedestrians with different colors of clothes, it feels like entering a modern city. This trend is gradually eroding the surrounding towns and even spreading to other counties. I believe that it will not be long before the entire southwest Yangzhou will be replaced by this trend, becoming younger and more vibrant. As the initiator of cultural transmission, Jun Changxiao always considered a problem after returning to the sect. The sect promoted the sect, first repelled the 5 sects in Xianzhou, and then cleaned up the extreme cold palace, gaining enough prestige. Why not play a little bigger? Anyway, it's already a fuss, so let more people understand that my eternal sect cannot be provoked, and it is not allowed to be provoked. Once the idea came up, it could not be suppressed at all. Sect Master Jun summoned Zen Ejin, expressed his thoughts, and asked, "Mr. Zen, what do you think?" Pa. Zen Ejin slapped the table and said, "Needless to say, if you want to play, play big. If you want to blow up more." The 2 lunatics looked at each other, and then shook their shoulders and laughed. Zhu Ringui. Jun Changxiao's voice suddenly rang out in the sect. Zhu Ringui, who was training members, was startled, and said with a twitch of his mouth, "He just came back. He won't go to other states to mess up again. Call 1,000 soldiers." Jun Changxiao's voice came, "Follow me to kill the demon sect branch." Yes. Zhu Ringui got the order. The 1,000 members who had just returned once again rode on the Hurricane Wolf and rushed out of Tegu Mountain, and the location they went to was exactly the demon sect branch. Jun Changxiao did not ride the Demon Ridge Black Hawk this time, but changed to the Hurricane Wolf King. On the way there, he said lightly, "It's time to collect the principal and interest." Demon Sect Branch. The Great Helmsman has been unable to sleep or eat these days, because the Eternal Sect almost destroyed the Extreme Cold Palace, which means that this once insignificant sect has become unimaginably strong. When a disciple was bullied, he dared to rush thousands of miles to fight with others. That Jun Changxiao is definitely a vengeful person. The sect once spied on his Qinglang Yanyu sword, and he also sent Jiangzi and others to Tegu Mountain. Once he has the strength, it is not surprising that he will bring people to kill. No. The Great Helmsman stood up and said in a deep voice, "We must notify the headquarters as soon as possible," hoping to send a strong man to sit in the southwest Yangzhou branch. Great Helmsman. At this time, a subordinate came to report, "Jiangzi is here." The Great Helmsman was stunned and said, "He is not a beggar in Jiangjia town. Why is he here? Is he also worried that Jun Changxiao will take revenge and dare not live in the town?" Jiang Yanwang strode in and bowed, saying, "Great Helmsman." Yeah. The Great Helmsman took a sip of tea, and his eyebrows were proud. Although his strength is not as good as Jiangzi, as the leader of the demonic sect, he has a higher position of power. Big leader. Jiangzi said, "Is there any news about the person I'm looking for?" Pa. The big leader put the teacup on the table and said impatiently, "If there is any news, I will inform you." Jiangzi sat down, his eyes cold, and said, "I, Jiangzi, have served the demonic sect for so many years, but every time I was given a perfunctory response. I just want to ask, are you helping me find someone? Jiangzi, the subordinate next to him, said coldly. Watch your tone. Cap. Jiangzi stood up, raised the Desert Eagle, and shot the other party in the head with a bang. He said coldly, I came here today to tell you that I quit. P.S. Thanks to several readers of Gideon for their generous rewards, and thanks to, what the hell are you looking at me for giving the reward directly to the leader on Gideon. There are more. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 594. If you want to be a tough guy, I will definitely help you. The chief helmsman stood up and saw his men fall to the ground. He said with horror, Godly fire gun. It seems. Jun Changxiao walked in from outside, sat in the first seat, crossed his legs and said, the chief helmsman has asked about my Wangu sect a lot, and even knows about the godly fire gun. The chief helmsman's face changed drastically, and he said in surprise, why are you here? Jun Changxiao looked at Jiangzi and said with interest, he means that I can't come? Yes. Jiangzi said, Sect Master. Sect Master? This guy called him Sect Master. Formally introduce yourself. Jun Changxiao pointed at Jiangzi and said, I'm the elder of Wangu sect, and I also thank the demon sect for its care over the years. The chief helmsman said angrily, Jiangzi, you are openly betraying the demon sect. Don't you know what the consequences will be? Sorry. Jiangzi shrugged and said, I'm not a disciple of the demon sect, so it's not a betrayal. Damn guy. The chief helmsman was angry. Boom. At this moment, there was a loud bang outside, and the gate with the plaque of Devil Sect branch was smashed to pieces by Zhao Zuji's punch. Kill. The disciples of the Eternal Ancient Sect rushed in with swords. The members of the Demon Sect branch rushed out of the wing room and suddenly faced the enemy attack. They tried to fight back with weapons, but they were killed in pieces. After all, this is not a branch, and its strength is barely comparable to that of a 6th-rate sect. The disciples of the Eternal Ancient Sect just came from a 4th-rate sect, and they don't know how to write the word death when fighting with them. It's over. It's over. The big helmsman felt very disappointed. He guessed that Jun Changxiao was a vengeful person, but he didn't expect that the other party would come to him right after returning from Luzhou in the northeast, and didn't give him time to prepare. Big helmsman. Jun Changxiao clasped his fingers together and said, you should know why I came here this time, right? Puff. Puff. There were people talking and laughing in the hall, while the disciples outside the hall were killing each other, creating a harmonious and cruel scene. The great helmsman's face became more and more ugly, and his palms, soles, and body were covered with sweat. This was not a symptom of kidney deficiency, but he was scared. It was strange to say that Jun Changxiao sat next to him and did not release any momentum, but he made him feel a lot of pressure, and even his breathing became rapid. If the great helmsman knew that the two people in front of him were genuine 9th grade sword and martial arts kings, he would understand why he was so afraid. Master Jun. He mustered up his courage and said, during this period of time, my demon sect has not offended the Eternal Sect. What about before? The great helmsman trembled and said, Master Jun, I'm just following orders. When he first received the order from the headquarters, he sent Jiangzi and others to Tegu Mountain, but he was not so terrified. Oh, right. Jun Changxiao remembered something and said, what happened to the battle between your demonic sect and Taken sect for the spiritual stone vein some time ago? This guy must have known about this from Jiangzi. Speak. Jun Changxiao said in a deep voice. The chief helmsman hurriedly said, Master Jun, my demonic sect repelled the Taken sect and guarded the spiritual stone vein. Where is the vein? Jun Changxiao said. Bang, the stream of light burst out and hit the chief helmsman's leg directly. His body suddenly tilted and half knelt on the ground. His face suddenly became ferocious. Jun Changxiao put the smoking muzzle of the Desert Eagle against his head and said coldly, you must tell me everything about this seat, and you have no right to refuse. Devil. The chief helmsman endured the severe pain and the burning sensation on his forehead, and said with a ferocious face, "Jun Changxiao, if you dare to kill me, you will be an enemy of the demonic sect. This is a ruthless person. It will be difficult to escape alive. After falling into his hands today, you will die anyway, so why not be a man?" Honestly, Jun Changxiao said, "I really want you to live and witness with your own eyes how the demon sect was destroyed by my Wangu sect." But, bang, he pulled the trigger and shot directly through the head of the helmsman, saying, "If you want to be a tough guy, I will definitely help you." When it comes to treating the enemy, Jun Changxiao is really merciless. It's a pity for the iron-willed helmsman. It was just a symbol of manliness. If Sect Master Jun had played some tricks, he would have surrendered immediately. But he didn't even give him a second chance to ask, and just shot him. On the road to the underworld, he must be crying and shouting, "Brother, can we play by the rules next time?" Master Lee. Jun Changxiao took back the Desert Eagle and transmitted his voice. "Investigate the location of the spiritual stone vein that the demonic sect and the taken sect are fighting for. The sooner the better." Yes. Li Luoqia used the sound transmission technique to contact the intelligence bases in the cities of southwest Yangzhou. The spies in the northeastern Luzhou would make mistakes, but once they were in operation in their own territory, there would be absolutely no mistakes. "Let's go." Jun Changxiao stepped over the corpse of the great helmsman. As soon as he walked out of the hall, the disciple walked up, put a mink coat on him, and then put on glaring sunglasses, and walked away with his 8-step outward. Hehe. Outside the demonic sect branch, Zendejun, like a madman, covered his face and laughed strangely, and then directly detonated the thunder array. Boom. After a loud bang, the demonic sect branch, which had been established in southwest Yangzhou for nearly 100 years, was razed to the ground. No. Jun Changxiao suddenly turned around, looking at the ruins with a deep pit blown out, biting his finger, and said in despair, "The treasures in the branch haven't been taken away yet." "Sect Master," Li Qingyang whispered, "the first thing the disciple did when he came in was to plunder the money and put it all in the space ring." The desperate Jun Sect Master heard it and immediately resumed his pretentious style. He patted the second disciple on the shoulder and said with relief, "I love you, I love you." Bang, the door of the god-killing temple was blown open, and several members fell to the ground in pain. Elder Zan and Jiuo Degeng, who were discussing the matter, heard the noise and hurried out of the hall. They looked murderous and said, "Who dares to mess around in my god-killing temple branch?" The word "world" was not spoken. Because Jun Changxiao walked in surrounded by the disciples, the invisible strong momentum immediately made them shudder. To eradicate the branch of the demonic sect in Yangzhou in the southwest, this branch of the god-killing temple must also be uprooted. In front of the life and death arena, Elder Bei from the headquarters of the god-killing temple once said arrogantly, "Today, the Iron Bone Sect must be eliminated from the martial arts world." At that time, Jun Changxiao was very angry, but the sect had no strength, so he could only choose to swallow his anger. In the end, it was only with the bluff of Elder Wei that the guy was scared away. Today, this seat and my disciples have become powerful, and the old accounts must be settled today. Master Jun. Elder Zan said in a deep voice, "What do you mean by this?" Bang, Xiao Zuji pulled the trigger, and the bullet passed through the void and directly smashed the plaque engraved with God-killing temple hanging in the hall. "Still don't understand?" "It's okay." Jun Changxiao raised his hand and told them in the most straightforward words, "Destroy it." Chapter 595, Angering the Public. Destroyed. Two simple words. How arrogant. The God-killing temple's helmsman and two elders looked extremely ugly. Since the establishment of the branch in Yangzhou, southwest China, no one dared to bring people to kill openly. The demon sect's branch was also not provoked by anyone. Now, it has been razed to the ground. Sect Master Jun is very strong, but he may not dare to confront the third-rate evil sect now, but he can still deal with these branch fish. Jun Changxiao. Jiuo Degeng said coldly, "Are you going to declare war on my god-killing temple?" "You can think so." Jun Changxiao raised his hand, and the disciples behind him rushed in. Jiuo Degeng's eyes flashed with murderous intent, and then he fully activated his martial arts king cultivation, and landed on the martial arts field with a heavy momentum. However, just as he landed, Yi Xingchen appeared in front of him with the Zhangyan step, raised one hand, and said coldly, "Die." Swish, the 7 mysterious lights condensed in an instant, and a beam of light sprayed out from the palm of his hand, carrying a force of 10,000 kilograms, mercilessly piercing Guo Degong's chest, and a horrifying gap appeared. Domineering. No emotion. You. Before his consciousness disappeared, Guo Degong's eyes were filled with fear. He and Elder Guo had fought with Jun Changxiao when they went to Tegu Mountain, but now they were killed instantly when facing this sect disciple. Elder Guo. Elder Zen roared angrily. Go to hell with him. Yi Xingchen raised his hand, and the hot flames whistled out, turning into an explosive slashing light, slashing down from top to bottom. Boom. In full view of the crowd, Elder Zen was directly cut in half by the Chixio fiery flame slash, and a huge gap was blasted out of the hole behind him by the flame slash. 2 Martial Kings, killed in 2 moves. Yi Xingchen, who broke through the Martial King, was simply explosive. The leader of the branch of the god-killing temple, who was blown away by the scorching wave, looked horrified. At this moment, all he could do was to witness his disciples being ruthlessly killed by the disciples of the eternal ancient sect, and then fall into the ground one by one. Art comes from explosions. Zendegen stood outside the branch base of the god-killing temple, spread his hands, and said with a ferocious face, "Please enjoy it." Boom. The lightning flashed, and the earth shook. Under the dust, Jun Changxiao led his disciples to leave. Just as he came in a hurry, he left in a hurry, without taking away a cloud, but only taking away countless treasures from the other party. "Master." Li Luoqiu's voice came from his ears. "We found the spirit stone vein of the demon sect." Jun Changxiao raised a faint sneer at the corner of his mouth, and then turned around, and led thousands of disciples to the location of the vein. Spirit stone vein. Calculate the interest on the debt owed by the demon sect. This day, 2 third-rate evil sect branches were razed to the ground. When the news spread, the entire southwest Yangzhou was shocked. What? After getting the information, Yi Xiangxing said in surprise, the demon sect and the god-killing temple branches were destroyed by the eternal sect? Yes. Elder Zhao's mouth twitched and said, the branch base was also razed to the ground. Too messy. Yi Xiangxing frowned. Elder Zen said bitterly, if this kid didn't mess around, how dare he go to Northeast Lhasa to smash the Jahan Palace? If this goes on, I'm afraid it will cause public anger. Elder Zhao said worriedly. Although the matter in Northeast Lhasa has come to an end for the time being, the other party will never give up. Now that he has provoked 2 third-rate evil sects again, Jun Changxiao is going to force himself to a dead end. However, they don't know that what Jun Zhangsu means is strike while the iron is hot and play big. Oh my god. 2 branches of the evil sect were destroyed by the eternal sect. This is a blatant provocation to the demonic sect and the god-killing temple. I have a feeling that before long countless masters will come to Yangzhou in the southwest. Damn, do I need a premonition? They will definitely come. The boundless ice sea. The master of the extreme cold palace knelt in an ice valley, surrounded by wooden chairs, and said, the extreme cold palace was almost destroyed by Jun Changxiao. Please ask the great elder to come out and administer justice. Boom. The glacier in the ice valley exploded, and a white light flew out and landed in front of him. It was an old man in his 70s, with a head full of white hair, and a chilling cold aura condensed around his body. He said in a cold voice, such an arrogant young man, I must go and meet him. Swish. The white light penetrated the sun, and the cold air swept 1,000 miles around, making all living beings shiver with cold. This aura. The leader of Zuanling sect noticed it, and said in surprise, half-step martial saint. It must be the grand elder of Jahan Palace. With such anger, I'm afraid he will go to Yangzhou in the southwest, to settle accounts with Wangu sect. The leader of Shanghan sect frowned. These 4th-rate sects all have the old generation of strong men, but they all choose to retreat and pursue higher martial arts. They rarely show up on weekdays, unless the sect is in danger. Jahan Palace suffered such a disaster, and was almost destroyed. If the Grand Elder who was in retreat still sat back and did nothing, it would definitely be unreasonable. But, the disciples of Wangu sect have the order of the Ice Emperor. It is probably not appropriate to go to Wangu sect to cause trouble. Lu Qian, who was practicing injixo an ice bond, felt the violent coldness of the boundless ice sea, and her eyebrows frowned immediately. Demonic sect headquarters. Sect leader Jun Changxiao said with a cold look, "You dare to destroy our branch in southwest Yangzhou, Jun Changxiao, you are really brave." Report. At this moment, a subordinate entered the hall and said, "The mine in southwest Yangzhou was occupied by the Eternal Ancient Sect, and thousands of disciples were killed." Jun Changxiao, who could still bear it, heard the news, and his head exploded. "Third elder, fourth elder," he said in a deep voice, "go to southwest Yangzhou, go to the Eternal Ancient Sect." Sect leader. An elder hurriedly bowed and said, "The Eternal Ancient Sect is protected by the Certification Hall and the Shire Academy. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for us to send people there, Ashley. If I don't fight back, after being bullied to my face, what qualifications do I have to lead the entire sect?" Jun Changxiao said angrily. If only the branch was destroyed, he could tolerate it, but the mine was occupied, the loss was heavy, and he couldn't swallow this breath. And the Eternal Ancient Sect must pay the price. Swish, swish. The two martial emperors from the demonic sect headquarters turned into streams of light and rushed away. Perhaps they knew what the Eternal Sect had done in Luzhou, northeast China, so they sent out peak martial emperors. A big battle. At the same time, the god-killing temple headquarters also sent out masters. Although their losses could not be compared with those of the demonic sect, they also sent out two peak martial emperors. Of course, the two evil sect leaders knew that if the Certification Hall and Shire Academy insisted on protecting the Eternal Sect, they might not be able to destroy it, but they had to put pressure on them. 4 peak martial emperors are the biggest pressure. Really, huge pressure. Li Xiangxing and Sita Haoan were both worried when they got the news. Hoo-hoo. At this moment, a majestic and heavy force suddenly emerged in the City Lord's mansion, causing the two to exclaim in surprise, "City Lord Mu has come out of retreat." "This aura," Sita Haoan said solemnly, "he has stepped into the level of a half-step martial saint." Li Xiangxing said in disbelief, "It has been a long time since a strong man of this level appeared in southwest Yangzhou. City Lord Mu is worthy of being a legend in the entire state." "Father." In the academy, Mu Hanglian's bright eyes were filled with joy. Swish. A middle-aged man with a dignified appearance and awe-inspiring without anger, stood in the sky and said in a voice transmission, "During the time when my father was in retreat, has southwest Yangzhou been peaceful? With the lord of the Jun clan here, peace is a fart." Chapter 596 Mu Changhang. 100 years ago, on the day of the rainbow after the rain, a baby boy was born in the west courtyard of the Mu family. Because he was born out of wedlock, the baby boy had never received the love of his father or even his family, since he was a child, as if he was abandoned by the whole world. It was such an ordinary child who rose from obscurity. In just 100 years, he not only broke through the martial emperor, but also took control of the huge Mu family, and became the new city lord of Shire City. Yes, he is Mu Changhang, the father of Mu Hanglian. This is a strong man with great ideals and ambitions. Under his management, Shire City has developed rapidly, its strength has been rising steadily, and it was finally rated as a royal city. After reaching middle age, the entrepreneurial passion is gone, and Mu Changhang is immersed in martial arts, pursuing a high realm. The most talked about by the world is, although Mu Changhang has supreme power and wealth, he only loves his wife all his life, not to mention concubines, and even confidants. Such a person can't find any faults at all. However, he just likes to brag when he drinks too much, so that his daughter has not been married yet. Because he had no children, he gradually withdrew from politics and handed over power to Mu Hanglian, hoping that his daughter would inherit his will and make the royal city more prosperous. After coming out of seclusion, the first thing he asked was whether the southwestern Yangzhou was peaceful, which showed that the seclusion was not short. "Father," Mu Hanglian said, "not peaceful." "Not peaceful?" Mu Changhang frowned and said, "Could it be that Zuo Cheokwan of Zhenyang County started a war while I was in seclusion? He is worthy of being the city lord." Even in seclusion, one can sense that the governor of Zhenyang County is not a law-abiding person. "Father," Mu Hanglian said hurriedly. I just received intelligence that the demonic sect and the god-killing temple sent 4 peak martial emperors to rush to Yangzhou in the southwest of our country. Demonic sect. God-killing temple. Mu Changhang sneered and said, these 2 evil sects have no grudges against Yangzhou in the southwest of our country. Why do they send strong men here? Because. Mu Hanglian paused and said, Father, this is a long story. Your daughter needs to tell you slowly. She needs to tell Jun Changxiao and his Wangu sect one by one, but the confidence is very large and cannot be summarized in 1 or 2 sentences. In fact, a word of handsome can also summarize the life of Jun Changxiao. Swish. Mu Changhang raised his hand, and the space suddenly condensed, as if it was torn apart by some force. Kakakaka. Mu Hanglian in the academy suddenly felt a suction force whistling, and the whole person merged into the twisted space, and appeared in the hall of the city lord's mansion. Space transfer. Sita Heoan's eyes were full of envy. He is now at the peak of the martial emperor. Although he is only a little short of becoming a half-step martial saint, it is difficult for him to comprehend this ability to control space. What? In the hall of the city lord's mansion, when Mu Changhang heard about the Strongest Sect and Jun Changxiao from his daughter, and especially heard about the cultivation of the sword and martial arts kings, he stood up directly, with ecstasy in his sharp eyes. I never thought that the big talk I said after drinking would come true one day. Daughter. He stopped Mu Hanglian from continuing and asked hurriedly, are you sure that boy is only 20 years old? Yes. How does he look? Master Jun has a heroic and handsome appearance. Jun Changxiao is really good looking. Mu Hanglian must admit this. How is his character? Mu Changhang asked. Instead of asking how he became strong, or how the sect rose to prominence, Mu Hanglian asked about his appearance and conduct. Her pretty face blushed and she said, Father, what are you thinking about? Ha ha ha. Seeing his daughter's shy look, Mu Changhang slapped the table and laughed. Father will prepare the betrothal gifts and go to Qingyang County to propose marriage. Mu Hanglian said speechlessly, Father, has a woman ever proposed to a man? Daughter. Mu Changhang said seriously, it's easy to find a 2-legged person, but it's not easy to find a 3-legged toad. For your lifelong happiness, it doesn't matter if we take the initiative. Father. Mu Hanglian frowned and said, I'm talking about business. Ha ha ha. Mu Changhang laughed. It's rare to make my daughter so shy. This little guy named Jun Changxiao must be my son-in-law of the Mu family. Mu Hanglian was really about to cry. In fact, she didn't know that City Lord Mu was also too guilty. Now that he finally met the 3-legged toad and fulfilled the big words he had said before, how could he let him run away easily? Jun Changxiao, quack quack quack. This kid beat up the 5 4th-rate sects from Xianzhou who came to fight. After listening to what Jun Changxiao had done recently, Mu Changhang almost flew directly to the Wangu sect. He held his hand affectionately and said, my good son-in-law, you did a great job. What else? What else? Come on. Mu Hanglian told the story of Lasao in the northeast. The city lord Mu, who had experienced many storms, frowned and said, this is a fool. Taking people to other states to mess things up, although it is proud, but if it is not handled properly, it will directly escalate to a confrontation between the 2 states. What does this have to do with the demonic sect and the god-killing temple? Mu Changhang asked puzzledly. Mu Hanglian said, just yesterday, Sect Master Jun led people to wipe out the branches of the 2 sects in Yangzhou in the southwest. Mu Changhang stood up and said, this kid actually did something that his father dared not do. How can others sleep soundly beside the bed? After Xianzhou Royal City was promoted to a royal city, he had thought about clearing out all the branches of the major foreign forces in the state. But he never took action, because his strength was not enough to compete with the 3rd-rate evil sect, and he had to wait for the opportunity. After coming out of seclusion this time, his cultivation level has entered the half-step martial saint. City Lord Mu will definitely plan and find a false excuse to pull out all the nails under his nose. Who would have thought? This little guy named Jun Changxiao was 1 step faster than himself. Ha ha ha. Mu Changhang laughed out loud and said, your temper and style are so suitable. How can you not be my son-in-law? Mu Changhang. Father. Mu Hanglian said angrily, we are talking about business. Mu Changhang sat down again and said, "Daughter, your future happiness is the biggest business of your father's life. As a parent, don't you think about the future of your children?" So even if it was just wishful thinking on the part of City Lord Mu, there was nothing wrong with it. Mu Hanglian didn't want to argue with her father about this issue, so she said, "4 peak martial emperors from 2 third-rate evil sects are coming to kill us. How do you plan to deal with them, father?" Needless to say, Mu Changhang stood with his hands behind his back, and said coldly, "If they dare to touch a hair of my warriors from Yangzhou in the southwest, I will make them pay 100 times the price. Stand up. Call for City Lord Mu. HMM." At this moment, under the release of his spiritual thoughts, he captured the rippling of the sky space, and a stream of light was moving forward at a very fast speed, and the momentum it exuded was comparable to his own. The location he was heading to was exactly Qingyang County. Could it be that the demonic evil sect and the god-killing temple not only sent peak martial emperors, but also sent a half-step martial saint? Swish. Mu Changhang's figure flashed, and he appeared in the sky outside the royal city, chasing after him at a speed that was difficult to see with the naked eye. Chapter 597. The half-step martial saint arrives. The sect's difficulty. Wangazang. Jun Changxiao was sitting in the hall, happily counting the natural spirit stones in the space ring. After finding the spirit stone vein of the demonic sect, he occupied it without hesitation. It was a coincidence. This medium-sized vein was almost mined out. The demonic sect began to count and prepare to send 100,000 spirit stones to the headquarters, but before they left, Jun Zhangzu brought people to kill them. No wonder Yin Shanghai was furious. After all, those were 100,000 real natural spirit stones. The 2 peak martial emperors who were killing them were not interested in causing much trouble to Wang Gozang, but only wanted to get back the lost spirit stones. These spirit stones can definitely improve the strength of the sect when used to develop it. Jun Changxiao murmured. With so many disciples, the supply of the mountain veins is a bit stretched, and 100,000 natural spirit stones are of considerable value. This time, the settlement went smoothly. It's a little regrettable that no hidden tasks were completed. In fact, with a contribution value of 20,000, Jun Zhangzu is not in urgent need. He needs a talisman of experience, because he is only one step away from reaching the peak and triggering the epic mission. Jun Changxiao walked out of the hall in a good mood. Wei Lao stood outside, looking up at the sky with a worried look on his face. Wei Lao, what are you thinking about? The weather has changed. It's going to rain soon. Jun Changxiao looked at the dark clouds pressing over. Wei Lao said solemnly, "Master, I have a bad feeling." "What's wrong?" Jun Changxiao said. Wei Lao said, "The sect has been too ostentatious recently, and there may be a disaster." "It's okay." Jun Changxiao said, "I have ordered Zen Lao to set up a formation at the foot of the mountain. If someone comes to make trouble, I will definitely blow them up. I have been out for a long time, and I will think about it after I come back. I have been so arrogant during this period, and the 2 third-rate evil sects will definitely not let it go. Although there is a large formation to protect the sect, for safety reasons, I still ordered the bomb maniac Zendegen to set up a variety of formations at the main roads at the foot of the mountain in case of emergency." Wei Lao said, "Zendechao is only a formation king after all. When the enemy is stronger, the formation he arranged will be difficult to resist. For example, a half-step martial saint can easily break the foundation of the formation by shaking the space, thus losing its effect." Jun Changxiao has also heard about the half-step martial saint. Strictly speaking, this is a level between the martial saint and the peak martial emperor. There is no such thing as a half-step martial king or martial emperor. There is a martial saint and a martial emperor, which are considered to be separately divided from the high realm. Jun Changxiao said, "As far as I know, there are not many martial saints in Xinjiang continent, and half-step martial saints should not be seen everywhere. Will a strong man of this level not be devoted to the pursuit of martial arts, and be distracted to take care of worldly affairs?" Wei Lao said, "I'm just making a metaphor. Don't worry." Jun Changxiao said, "It will be fine." Hoo-hoo. At this moment, a vast force condensed from the sky and instantly turned into a huge palm print, carrying supreme power and pressing down. This sudden change made Wei Leo's face change greatly. When he felt the terrifying spiritual energy, he exclaimed, "Half-step martial saint." At this moment, Jun Changxiao's smile stopped abruptly, and a strong ominous sign suddenly rose in his heart. "My Wei Leo, you are really a crow's mouth." Jun Changxiao. Suddenly, an angry voice that shook the space came from the sky. "You bullied my Jahan palace. Today I come to pay you back 100-fold. Hoo-hoo." The huge palm print directly shook the dark clouds and collapsed, like a meteorite from outer space pressing down from above and below. In the range of Tegu Mountain, a strong and murderous aura appeared. At that moment, all the warriors in the 8 cities of Qingyang County heard the angry shout from the half-step martial saint and the huge palm print that appeared out of thin air in the sky. They were so scared that their faces turned pale and their hearts trembled. "It's over." Ziguancan looked horrified. As long as the terrifying palm print is pressed down, not to mention the Eternal Sect, even the entire Iron Bone Mountain within a radius of 100 miles will be turned into a ruin. The strongest power contains the meaning of not being disobeyed. Even the distant Kangshan sect clearly saw the palm print, and their faces were ugly. Jun Changxiao's mind was also trembling under the pressure, but he hurriedly activated the sect protection formation and shouted loudly, "Open the spiritual armor." Buzz, buzz. In an instant, all the disciples in the inner and outer courtyards of the Eternal Sect released their spiritual energy and gathered armor in front of them, but they deeply realized that the power was too terrifying and they could never resist it. Are they going to die? This was the only thought in the minds of Li Qingyang and others. Damn it. Li Xingchen, who had just walked out of the training tower, felt the terrifying pressure and said angrily, if this emperor had the cultivation in his previous life, this kind of power would be nothing but the light of a firefly. Unfortunately, he doesn't have it now. Therefore, under the killing moves of the half-step martial saint, Li Xingchen's body was restrained, and he could only watch helplessly as the palm print pressed down. Not good. Not good. He wooed, his face also turned ugly. He spent all his cultivation to escape the pursuit of the powerful enemy, and now he has to experience life and death in the mortal world. This is too fucked. Hoo-hoo. At this moment, in the outer courtyard of the Eternal Sect, a raging flame rose, only to see Xiao Langlong activate the second combat form, turning into a giant, kicking his legs, rushing out of the sect protection formation like a cannonball, and angrily said, "No one is allowed to hurt my master." While speaking, the barefoot little fairy was already standing in front of him, with unprecedented seriousness in his eyes, saying, "Clown bug, you and I will fight side by side for the master today." Pa. Xiao Langlong slapped over and knocked the cute little girl into the sect protection formation. He looked up at the palm print pressing down and said resolutely, "Disgusting woman, don't get in the way here. Brother Long. Really manly." Hoo-hoo. At this moment, the monstrous palm print had already pressed down. Xiao Langlong looked at Jun Changxiao. A brilliant smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Then he raised his head. Flames erupted all over the sky, and his whole body instantly transformed into a ferocious beast covered in red. The horns are like a deer, the head is like a camel, the eyes are like a rabbit, and the neck is like a snake. The belly is like a clam, the scales are like fish, the paws are like a tiger, and the ears are like a cow. Stepping on the void, there are 4 flaming feet, each with 5 eagle-like sharp claws. This is a dragon. This is a 5-clawed dragon. Seeing Xiao Langlong transform into a body representing the Chinese totem, Jun Changxiao was stunned. Roar. A dragon roar shook the 9 heavens. Xiao Langlong dragged his long body, carrying endless flames to meet the vast palm print that was pressing down. No. Jun Changxiao roared with a ferocious face. The palm print that was pressed down was too terrifying. Even if Xiao Langlong's flames had reached the extreme now, rushing up would undoubtedly be like an egg hitting a rock. Not allowed. Never allowed. Jun Changxiao's eyes were red, and a violent wind suddenly surged around him. The 40-meter long sword was directly pulled out and locked on the palm print that was pressed down. Freeze. Freeze for me. It's a pity that no matter how he manipulated it, the palm print with supreme majesty was still falling down with a bang and was not affected by the constraints of space at all. Although the sword that was difficult to collect after the Bankai was very strong, it really couldn't do it against the half-step martial saint. Without this sword, Jun Changxiao was equivalent to losing his biggest trump card. At this moment, he could only watch Xia Lang Lang meet the vast palm print with bloodshot eyes. Boom. A deafening explosion came from the protective formation, and the whole earth seemed to lose all colors in an instant. Jun Changxiao's heart was bleeding. Xia Lang Lang rushed over like this, and he was definitely in danger in the face of absolute power. Crack, crack, crack. The space on the Iron Bone Mountain collapsed on a large scale, with bumps and depressions, just like a mirror, that was directly shattered. The power of a half-step martial saint is really terrifying. Swish. A stream of light rushed through the formation, and then fell to the ground with a bang. Xia Lang Lang returned to his original appearance, sank into the ground and fainted. Fuck you. Jun Changxiao cursed angrily. The next second, he was stunned. Because the violent energy completely dissipated, a majestic middle-aged man appeared above the protective formation. He put one hand in the void, and a materialized defense barrier appeared, covering the entire Iron Bone Mountain. Little bastard. Mu Changhang turned his head and said in a collapse, I kicked it down to save it, so why curse? After that, he looked at the half-step martial saint hanging in the sky and said, who gave you the courage to burst out your cultivation so unscrupulously on my territory? Chapter 598. This kid has a brain problem. Xia Lang Lang was not knocked down by the palm print, but kicked back by Mu Changhang. Although the way he landed was a bit embarrassing, it was not a big deal. Why did he faint? Because the limit burst was too forced, and the body could not bear it at all. Jun Changxiao let out a long sigh of relief, and then glared at the old man who gradually emerged in the sky in the distance. How could there be a half-step martial saint in the fourth-rate Jehen Palace? Elder Wei and Elder Zen were also puzzled. Usually, the standard for a fifth-rate sect is the martial king, and the upper limit for a fourth-rate sect is the martial emperor. A force with a half-step martial saint can be completely classified as third-rate. As for what Elder Wei was worried about just now, he was also worried that the demon sect in the Killing God Temple would send such a strong man to kill him, but the first to come would be the strong man from the Jehen Palace. Mu Changhang was also puzzled. However, at this moment, he was more angry. A half-step martial saint is already one of the top strong men in the Xinjiang continent. He actually came to kill without saying hello. How much does this look down on Southwest Yangzhou? In secular wars, those above the martial king are not allowed to participate. There are also unwritten rules between states. Top masters can come and go freely, but they cannot attack at will, because their strength is too strong and the damage they cause is unimaginable. Even if it is not for the Wangu sect today, Mu Changhang will never give up. Who are you? The Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace said in a deep voice. Mu Changhang said, the Lord of Xianai Wangcheng. It turns out to be Lord Mu. The Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace said this, and he was wondering in his heart, when did the Lord of Wangcheng break through to the half-step martial saint? If he had known this, he should not have come here with such a huge momentum. It's a coincidence. Both of them had just broken through not long ago. Because of Jun Changxiao, they were originally unrelated, but ended up confronting each other in the sky of Qingyang County. Lord Mu, the Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace, said, this boy led people to kill into Luzhou in the northeast and almost destroyed my Extreme Cold Palace. I would like to ask, who gave him the courage? As he spoke, his momentum gradually subsided, and he was no longer so murderous. As they are both half-step martial saints, and the other party is the Lord of the Royal City, they naturally cannot be so reckless. However, the people have come, and the murderous intention has been exposed. Since it is already difficult to get off the tiger, they must not admit defeat. Mu Changhang said coldly, a fourth-rate sect can't beat the fifth-rate sect in my state, and you still have the nerve to ask, don't you feel ashamed? The great elder of the Jehen Palace was so angry that his face turned red and green. The sect of my state challenged the Jehen Palace in a weak position. It's not just that you are not as skilled as others. The 8 sect leaders are collectively dispatched, which is bullying. Now they send a half-step martial saint to kill, which is too much. Mu Changhang said coldly. In the dark, the masters of Xianai Royal City and the certification hall twitched their mouths. If it was just a challenge, it would be nothing. It would be embarrassing if you couldn't beat it, but that kid almost destroyed the Jehen Palace. Since they have a half-step martial saint, they will definitely not tolerate it. Lord Mu, you are too direct in protecting him. This is fine. After all, he is the Lord of Wangqing in southwest Yangzhou. It is more appropriate for him to come forward to protect him than for a neutral organization like myself to do so. Someone asked, if Mu Changhang did not come out of retreat at this time, wouldn't the Eternal Ancient Sect be in trouble? Not true. The strong men from Xianyu Academy and Certification Hall had arrived in advance. It was just like in Lasao in the northeast. They were forcibly stopped, because of other factors, before they had time to show up. The Grand Elder of Jahan Palace said in a deep voice, Lord Mu, is it clear that he wants to protect the Eternal Ancient Sect? Nonsense. Mu Changhang said, if this lord does not protect the forces in southwest Yangzhou, who will? Jun Changxiao, who was standing below, heard this and immediately had a surge in favor of the Lord of Wangqing whom he had never met. However, how can I trouble others? Jun Changxiao said with a smile. Lord Mu, this is the grievance between my Eternal Ancient Sect and Jahan Palace. Let Jun handle it. Mu Changhang was stunned. Doesn't this guy know that the other party is a half-step martial saint? Tap. Jun Changxiao took a step forward, his eyes locked on the Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace, and said, today, I will personally meet this half-step martial saint. Elder Wei and Elder Zen were stunned. Is the sect master crazy? He dares to meet a half-step martial saint. Mu Changhang's mouth twitched, and he transmitted his voice, little bastard, don't show off. With this city lord here, no one can hurt your eternal sect. Jun Changxiao blamed himself and said, I thought that the highest level of a fourth-rate sect was no more than the peak martial emperor, so I brought my disciples to the Extreme Cold Palace. I never thought that there would be a half-step martial saint. This is my mistake. He dared to go to Lasao in the northeast, and his biggest reliance was the difficult sword. As a result, it was difficult to show its effect in front of the half-step martial saint, which was also something he didn't expect. This is a lesson, and it also made me realize that some sects with strong foundations must not be measured by level alone. Jun Changxiao kept talking to himself, more like summing up experience or self-examination. Yes, I have been wasting time during this period, going to someone else's territory to mess things up, and also eradicating 2 third-rate evil sect branches. Any one of these is infinitely suicidal. The half-step martial saint came to kill him, just to pay for the previous suicidal behavior. I like Jun Changxiao who prepared for a rainy day in advance, but there is still a mistake. Same mistake. He looked at the unconscious Zhao Langlang and said, I will never make it again. Swish. While speaking, he stopped outside the mountain gate, stood in front of the sect protection formation, looked up at the Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace, and said in a deep voice, do you dare to fight me? Hoo-hoo, the power of the 9th grade sword martial arts burst out. This level would definitely cause a great shock in front of the martial king, or the ordinary martial emperor, but the half-step martial saint would definitely not be shocked. The Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace frowned. This boy is so young, but he has such terrible strength. I dare not imagine how he will grow up in the future. If the sect had not been almost destroyed, this half-step martial saint would never have personally killed the Eternal Ancient Sect, thus making the conflict between them more intense. Lord Mu, the Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace said coldly, should I respond or not? Mu Changhang said, this kid has a problem with his brain. There is no need to pay attention to him. This city lord will accompany you to have a good fight today. King level against half-step saint level. Think about it with your feet. There is no chance of winning. Lord Mu, Jun Changxiao said in a firm tone. Today I must fight this half-step martial saint. Mu Changhang wanted to kick him, but he still suppressed it and said in a voice transmission, boy, are you crazy? Dare to challenge a half-step martial saint? Shut up quickly and find a cool place to lie down. Let me handle the next thing. City Lord Mu was very powerful. However, Jun Changxiao said firmly, I just took the medicine. I must fight him. Mu Changhang said, how sure are you? Asking a king level, how sure is it to fight a half-step saint? Am I also infected, and there is something wrong with my brain? 100%. Jun Changxiao said. Mu Changhang's mouth twitched. At this moment, He finally understood why this kid dared to be so arrogant recently. It turned out to be a madman. The Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace thought for a while and said, City Lord Mew, since the people in your state are so persistent, I can only accept the challenge. Jun Changxiao smiled coldly. Then, he skillfully opened the system mall and clicked on the high-level mall. Swipe. The mall opened, and rows of high-level products suddenly appeared. 9-turn marrow cleansing pill. Dragon elephant prajna palm. Shocking dragon footwork. 1000-year ice armor. Holy flame body. The first items I saw after crossing over were listed. The conditions for purchasing in the high-level mall are that the sect must be at the 5th rate level, which is in line with this. The purchase price of the high-level mall requires 10,000 points. Jun Changxiao currently has 20,000 points, which also meets the requirements. The hard-to-hold sword is his trump card. But after becoming a 5th-rate sect, the high-level mall is the real trump card of the Jun clan master, and it can be described as a trumpet library. 20,000 contribution points. You can buy 2 items in the high-level mall. Can you abuse the half-step martial saint? Urgent. Waiting online. Chapter 599 Abuse. If you walk by the river, you will get your shoes wet. Jun Changxiao had never expected that there was a half-step martial saint in the Extreme Cold Palace. If Mu Changhang hadn't taken action just now, the sect and Xia Langlan would definitely be in trouble. Even those who are proficient in calculations will make mistakes, not to mention Jun Changxiao, an ordinary person who traveled through time. However, putting aside the sudden killing of the other party, in fact, Jun Zhangzu may not be able to fight with the half-step martial saint, because the bigger trump card library has been opened since the sect was promoted to a sect. This is the biggest trump card that Jun Changxiao dared to go to Luzhou in the northeast and destroy the 2 evil sect branches. To be honest, he didn't think so at first. Keeping 20,000 contribution points is also used to develop the sect. Now that a half-step martial saint has come to kill and almost cause the sect to suffer, even if all of them are spent, he must be abused. There are many categories in the high-level mall, but the real use for combat, martial arts and elixirs must be excluded. After all, there is no time for Jun Zhangzu to comprehend, so it must be the kind of products that can be bought and used immediately. For example, God-modified RPG rocket launcher. The introduction said that this is a portable rocket launcher. After the God modification, it is driven by the crystal core, and the condensed shells can directly shatter the space. God modified products have special effects. This one also has special effects. Once it is activated and fired, it will hit the target 100%, even if the opponent travels through space or escapes to the ends of the earth. Such a great product. If it were in the past, Jun Zhangzu would definitely buy it. However, he continued to flip through it quickly, thinking to himself, there are only 20,000 contribution points, and if you want to use it, you have to use it on the handle. Next, Jun Changxiao saw another product called God-modified mechanical armed wings. Wearing this thing can allow a warrior to have a pair of wings, so that he can ignore the constraints of heaven and earth and fly freely, and can also enter a multi-armed combat posture. It looks a bit like Iron Man's battlesuit. Jun Changxiao murmured. No, it's too high-tech. It's out of place to take it out. In the primary and intermediate malls, Sect Master Jun prayed for good things. The high-level mall items made him wonder which one to buy. The main reason was that there was no combat power mark on the item description, so he was not sure whether he could bully the half-step martial saint after buying it. Continue to screen. Sect Master Jun, the Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace, said in a deep voice, I have accepted the challenge. Why don't you come out and fight quickly? Don't worry. Jun Changxiao said, I will give you some time to enjoy your life, because you will not have this opportunity soon. Arrogant. The Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace said coldly. If it weren't for City Lord Mew standing outside the formation, he would have taken action to break the sect protection formation. To be honest, only this kind of half-saint can shake the sect protection formation. Even if it is a martial emperor at the peak, it will not work, because the defense strength of the middle grade sect protection formation can resist the martial king and the martial emperor. In Jun Changxiao's view, the demonic evil sect and the killing god temple are nothing more than two branches that have been destroyed. Even if they really want to take revenge, they will never send a half-saint. He guessed it right. The most angry leader of the demonic sect only sent 2 peak martial emperors. Their purpose was not to destroy the eternal sect, but to ask for 100,000 spirit stones. The great elder of the extreme cold palace broke through the half-step martial saint and came to kill. It was really the biggest variable, and it was something Jun Changxiao had never dreamed of. Otherwise, even if the 4 peak martial emperors of the 2 evil sects came to kill and cause trouble for the sect, they would never be completely defenseless like just now. Jun Changxiao continued to flip through the books, his eyes locked on the product called the Talisman of Kyankan. Click for details. Item: the Talisman of Kyankan. Introduction: the talisman created by the Taoist ancestor has the power to reach the sky and reverse the world. Effect: after use, it can instantly stimulate the limit of the human body, thereby greatly increasing the cultivation. Advantages: according to the user's own potential, the cultivation is maximized, and the minimum level of major realm is stimulated. Disadvantages: the effect lasts for 60 minutes, and the effect ends. Within a year, you will be like a weak scholar with no power to tie a chicken. Price: 10,000 contribution points. Inspire a major realm. Jun Changxiao's eyes lit up and said, I'm now a 9th grade sword martial arts double king. After using it, can I reach the 9th grade sword martial arts double emperor? Not bad. The system said. Jun Changxiao said, for now, this item is the most reliable product. It should be no problem to abuse this guy. A half sage is only a little stronger than a peak martial emperor, but a 9th grade sword martial arts double emperor is definitely not ordinary. What's more, it's only the lowest stimulation. If it reaches the peak, or the level of a half-step sword martial arts double saint, it will definitely be able to abuse him to death. The system said, don't forget, there are side effects that last up to a year. If we defeat this half-step martial saint, my Wangu sect will surely shock the Xingqiu continent. It doesn't seem to be a big loss to exchange it for a year. Jun Changxiao said secretly. He said this, but continued to look at other products. The high-level mall has all kinds of martial arts, exercises, and pill recipes, but there are not many that can be used immediately after purchase. So Jun Changxiao can only consider buying talismans, rocket launchers, and mechanical armed wings. The first 2 products, even if there is a possibility of defeating a half-step martial saint, will give people the impression that they rely on external objects. If you use talismans, others will not be able to see it, and will only think that they are strong. Decision. Ding. The host consumes 10,000 contribution points, and obtains Kyankan Talisman X1, which has been transferred to the space ring. Ding. Sect contribution value. 10, over 20,000 point. After buying the Heaven and Earth Talisman, Jun Changxiao said proudly, everyone in this world thinks that my Wangu sect is just a new force rising from the insignificance, but they don't know that it inherits the ancient times and the Monkey King. Swish. He raised his hand, hooked his fingers, and pressed them against his temples. His clothes rose without wind, and he said, today, let the world know what the inheritance will of the Wangu sect is. Wangu sect ancestors, please give me your power to punish the offenders today. System. Can you not brag? Can you not make the sect look like it really comes from ancient times? No. You must brag and raise your own value. Otherwise, how can you be worthy of the 10,000 contribution points of the dead? Snap. The Heaven and Earth Talisman in the space ring was crushed. Whoosh, a stream of violent breath instantly burst out from Jun Changxiao's body, and the momentum formed instantly rippled across the entire Tegu mountain like ripples. Feeling the terrifying power, Mu Changhang exclaimed in surprise, Martial Saint? That's right. After Jun Changxiao crushed the talisman, all the muscles, meridians, spirit cores and even every inch of hair in his body were completely stimulated, and his cultivation realm instantly broke through to the martial saint. Not half a step. It's a real martial saint. That kind of terrifying pressure spread, and the space was shaken violently, as if it could collapse at any time. The protective formation and various formations arranged at the foot of the mountain all stopped working and lost their function under the severe interference of the space. Step. Jun Changxiao took a step forward, and the whole person was enveloped by the terrifying power. Hiss hiss hiss. His whole body erupted with light similar to that of an electric arc. If his hair turned golden and then stood up, it would be absolutely super. He raised his head and said in a deep voice, "You dare to come to my Wangu sect to act wild? You are tired of living." The face of the Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace changed drastically. Under the harassment of the terrifying holy power, his mind was difficult to stabilize, and his body suddenly lost balance and fell from a high altitude. But suddenly, the space rippled. Jun Changxiao appeared out of thin air in front of his falling trajectory and blasted over with the force that shook the space. Bang, the space sank and collapsed, presenting a dense spider web shape. Boom. 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 The Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace flew past like a cannonball, smashing layers of high mountains, and finally fell on the grass 100 miles away. The huge impact force directly shook the ground into a depression of more than 10 feet, as if it was caused by a small meteorite falling. Swish. Jun Changxiao appeared out of thin air above the deep pit, raised his hands, and a stream of energy burst out like a cannonball. Boom. 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 The exploding energy bombardment shook the entire Qingyang County. Chapter 600. Half-Saint is really vulnerable. Buzz. In Qingyang County, the ground shook regularly, shocking many warriors. This huge movement was like a terrible earthquake, and there was also a sense of imminent doomsday. Mu Changhang's mouth twitched violently. How could this little guy suddenly have such terrifying strength? Wait. He just said the inheritance will of the eternal ancient sect? Could it be that this is some kind of powerful special magical power that can instantly improve the cultivation? Mu Changhang had just come out of retreat and didn't know anything about the eternal ancient sect. The strong men from the Xianyu Academy and the certification hall hiding in the dark instantly remembered the previous rumors. What rumors? When recruiting the 100 sects, Jun Changxiao once said that the Iron Bone Sect originated from the Iron Bone Mountain in Aole country, and the first head was the Monkey King. At first, many people didn't take it seriously. Now he suddenly borrowed power from his ancestors and possessed such terrifying power. Could it be true? No one believes a lie if you tell it once, but if you tell it too many times, someone will believe it. And suddenly going berserk and possessing a powerful cultivation, violently abusing a half-step martial saint, you have to believe it. Yi Xingchen, who was in the sect, witnessed the sect master bullying the Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace with overbearing means, and he was more convinced that the sect originated from the upper realm. Wu Di was also very excited. This sudden increase in strength to the saint level must be some powerful magical power left by the predecessor Kixuan saint. He came to the Xinjiang continent and joined the Eternal Ancient Sect as a close disciple. It was definitely a great opportunity given by God. Alas, the two of them were doomed. Boom. The energy blasted into the deep pit again, and the dust filled the sky and covered the sun. Gradually, everything was clearly visible. The Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace sank to the ground. His whole body was blasted into a bloody mess, and he was almost fainted. Miserable. Extremely miserable. The Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace was still half a step away from being a true martial saint. In front of Jun Changxiao, who was greatly stimulated by his cultivation, he was really vulnerable. Speaking of which, the lowest level is one major realm upgrade. The fact that Sect Master Jun went directly from the 9th grade sword and martial arts double king to the martial saint shows that his body has great potential. No matter how great it is, it cannot escape the side effects of weakness, so don't look at how arrogant it is now. Once the time limit is over, it will definitely be over. Swish. Jun Changxiao penetrated the space and landed in the deep pit, saying, "Rubbish." The Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace was still thinking, but he had no strength to speak. He could only lie weakly in it with severe pain. Jun Changxiao's spiritual energy burst out, wrapped him up, and pulled him in front of him, saying, "My sect disciple is the successor of the Ice Emperor's mantle. Are you stupid to kill me so recklessly? Successor of the Ice Emperor's mantle?" The weak eyes of the Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace showed a trace of confusion. From his eyes, Jun Changxiao understood that he must not know that Lu Qianqian inherited the mantle of the Ice Emperor. Yes, The Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace didn't know. Knowing that the sect suffered heavy casualties and was almost destroyed, he came here in anger and knew nothing about other things. Where is the palace master of the Extreme Cold Palace? Although he was at the scene, he was injured all over by the thunder array while trying to protect the palace and finally fell to the ground helplessly. He had no idea that Liu Qianqian later showed the Ice Emperor's order. The saddest thing was that none of the 8 sect masters told him. When the palace master of the Extreme Cold Palace recovered a little from his injuries, he went to the endless ice sea without saying a word to complain to the Grand Elder. In Lhasao, northeast China, 8 fourth-rate sect masters sat together to drink tea. The leader of Zuanling sect said, "I didn't expect that the Grand Elder of Jun Palace actually broke through to the level of half-step martial saint. He came to Yangzhou in the southwest without knowing the truth. He will definitely deal a heavy blow to the Eternal Sect and let the world know that bullying our Lhasao forces must pay a price." Fortunately, I didn't tell him about the successor of the Ice Emperor at that time. Otherwise, even if he broke through to the level of Martial Saint, the Grand Elder of Jun Palace might not have the courage to cause trouble. He will know sooner or later. However, what has been done cannot be undone. We just need to wait and watch the fun. Come, have tea. If the Grand Elder of Jun Palace in Yangzhou in the southwest heard what they said, he would definitely spit out a mouthful of blood. "You bunch of bastards, use my Jun Palace as a gun." Old guy. Jun Changxiao pulled the Grand Elder of Jun Palace with a cold look and said, "Since you are here, don't go back. My Eternal Sect just happens to be short of servants. Stay here to clean the courtyard." Mu Changhang's mouth twitched. A half-step martial saint cleaning the courtyard in the Eternal Ancient Sect. This is absolutely a violation of dignity. Just now, a palm almost seriously injured Xiao Longlong and broke the protective formation of the sect. It was considered merciful that Sect Master Jun did not wipe him out on the spot. A half-step martial saint is not an ordinary person. Since you want to keep a life, you must have a way to achieve absolute control. Bang, bang. Jun Changxiao's fingers were like lightning, tapping on the bruised body of the Great Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace, instantly blocking all his 12 meridians. Sect Master. Wei Lao transmitted a voice. "It's not safe enough. You can forcibly strip out the soul of this person." "Can I?" Jun Changxiao said. Wei Lao said, "The spiritual thoughts of the martial saint level can penetrate the body of a warrior and forcibly strip the soul." "Then let me try." Jun Changxiao's spiritual thoughts moved, and the soul power instantly enveloped the Great Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace, and then directly penetrated and locked a wisp of soul representing the origin. This method of forced penetration is extremely overbearing. The face of the Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace was extremely ferocious, and he was sweating profusely, especially when he felt that his soul origin was flying out of his body uncontrollably. He was horrified and said, "No, no." Boom. The sea of consciousness seemed to explode instantly, and the powerful impact made it difficult for him to bear it, and he fainted immediately, and that wisp of soul origin was forcibly extracted and held in the palm of the Jun Sect Master's hand. "It's really good. Elder Wei can think of this idea. He must be an expert." Mu Changhang said in surprise, "Forcibly stripping the soul origin. Is this the horror of the martial saint?" Swish. Jun Changxiao waved his hand and threw the unconscious Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace to the sect's martial arts field, saying, "Lock him up." "Yes." Suzaomo and Li Fei rushed over and dragged him away. He came with great momentum, but now he has fallen to such a state. This half-step martial saint is really pathetic. Ordinarily, things should have ended here. But Jun Changxiao looked at the distant sky and sneered, "There are still 4 fleas that need me to deal with." Whoosh. As soon as the voice fell, the person disappeared out of thin air. Mu Changhang and the 2 organization masters were immediately envious. The strength of the martial arts saint is not only reflected in strength, but also in the absolute control of space, such as Jun Changxiao's ability to transfer instantly. Wait. Where is the Jun clan leader? Mu Changhang's spiritual thoughts extended thousands of miles away, locking on the 4 aggressive peak martial emperors, shaking his head and saying, "If they slip away now, they should still be able to come." Before the word "and" was finished, the space suddenly shook. Jun Changxiao walked out of the void and said lightly, "Are the four of you from the Eastern Tang dynasty going to the west to obtain the scriptures? PS. Please vote." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.